And welcome back, everybody. Getting things underway with another week of Valorant, another week of NECC, another week of Champions, and another week of our two faces here on camera. Joining you tonight is going to be myself, Mick. Over to the opposite side now is going to be Zobi. How are you doing?
I am doing amazing. As you said, I'm excited to be back for not just another week of Champions and ECC action, but the grand finals of Champions
Right.
Nationals. And the two teams that have fought their way here today are Grand Canyon University and the University of Maryland, or Terps Esports. And both of these teams I know a little bit about. I mean, GCU about to, move into that CECC land this weekend versus TB Sports. Very well rounded. I mean, they even have a few GC teams, so they have friends in high and low places. But let's start to take a look at the lineup for GCU. We got Sipe, Envies, Nader, Dino, and Volt.
Yeah, getting things in the way here. Already going ahead, getting into the rosters, the nitty gritty of these two teams. Looking at obviously what GCU's accomplished and looking at what their roster has here to work with, at least in terms of the game to start things off with. While they do have substitutions available, this could be the starting roster for their side. Let's take a look on the opposite end of the field. Their opposition, Terps Esports, the ones who are looking to come in and just kind of make a run of things with their record and their seeding. Obviously, as everything started off with. And that's going to be the likes of Yex, Flaps, Spartacus, Eugene, and Astro. So, I mean, both teams, obviously, we can go and hype them up all day, but, I mean, realistically, they're at this point of the grand finals, as you mentioned here in the Champions Division, so they've already earned their right. They've already gotten their hype. Even playing today alone is just enough of an accomplishment and achievement in its own right. But consider what they've done. Well, we talked about the rosters. We know what they have to provide here, but better yet, the biggest question is, where are we going to be fighting? What is the map lineup going to be looking like? And this is going to be in front of you right now with this veto. Starting things off with Icebox, moving things on to Splint. You can't go a single best of 5 without seeing Ascent and Sunset Bind being the followers there afterwards.
I mean, yeah, it's a best of 5 for the Nationals, so we're here for that full length feature of matches. And when I look at this history, it's really interesting because it definitely touches on some of the strengths and weaknesses of both squads. And I also think it's more interesting that Terps went ahead and got onto Icebox right out the gate, because that one's a coin toss for them. They are one
Right.
win and one loss. They've gone through some changes in the composition, so it'll be interesting to see what form we see for them today. And other than that, like all the rest, these teams don't lose much. And when they do, like I said, it's on maps that have been banned out or that Icebox. So they're definitely going to be aiming towards that later half of the pool to cinch things out instead of starting at a win on this map. Then maybe.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of kind of contemplations and a lot of discussions to be made about these teams and really what they've done over the course of the season, whether these wins and losses come from earlier stages when before adjustments are really made. Obviously, we've seen a lot of different iterations of just the game in general over the course of a single semester of school. So there's a lot of things that can still be somewhat relatively a coin toss, all things considered. But knowing Icebox being that map we're starting off with, you mentioned a couple roster adjustments, or at least in terms of the ancient compositions, and while those will be coming up here soon, the one thing that we can obviously kind of keep eyes on is, well, those controllers. We're going to be seeing the Viper more than likely already anyways. The jet picks can be more of a standard as well. The Sova off the back of it. I'm more so kind of looking towards these Sentinels, see really what they can accomplish, obviously, in the KJ, see whether or not we see another employment. Maybe the Cypher over here and there. It's a big curveball, but even then, when I talk about controllers, I'm talking about my lovely main man, Harbor. He does show up every here and there, and I love seeing the aggression. I love seeing how this map actually can work around him, and we have seen teams making those employments every here and there.
Well, GCU actually never played Icebox in at least the Nationals playoffs, so getting a look at their more recent composition is going to be a little bit harder for the Terps Esports to pin down. But you were talking about the Sentinel differences, and that's exactly what this team has gone through. They went from that old Icebox meta of Sage and KJ to now dropping both for a double controller with that Omen Viper and picking up the Chamber, which Flaps is no stranger to. It's one of their main agents that they play on Lotus, so I'm interested to see how they are going to leverage it here if they decide to follow through with that newer composition. And cat's out of the bag. Let's go ahead and see these agents and see if our predictions are correct. And no, they're gonna change things up here yet again. A different Sentinel. We got KJ, Sage, Chamber. No, we're going for the most aggro Sentinel of all in my mind, the Deadlock.
This is insane! I've never actually seen Deadlock in a game before! It's such a rarity. Honestly, it's like Christmas morning right now. Because Deadlock, I mean, realistically, she's gone through so many different iterations, so many different buffs. I mean, nobody's really been the biggest fan of her, but if you know the lineups, if you really have that much confidence in Deadlock as an agent, I mean, you're going to make her work. And quite frankly, just because we haven't seen her doesn't mean she's not really the best in the world. It just means that, well, there's already options available that everybody's already used to. Like you see with Nader and Volt on that Sage, on that KJ. We don't see the double Sentinel on the side of Terps Esports for that Deadlock. I mean, as you mentioned, being a little bit more aggressive, actually taking these fights, actually able to go ahead and manage to give a little bit more crowd control in the midst of these fights, and taking a little bit more manipulation and capitalizing off of that chaos. And I think, quite frankly, considering, well, with Gecko being more and more just common inside of this map, chaos is the name of the game, quite frankly, with him on the field.
No, definitely. It's usually one or the other team goes for that Gecko pick too, so I'm excited to see when they kind of clash in the same lobby. Other than that, it'll be interesting to see without that Sova, without that, tool to deny a KJ lockdown. Yes, technically you have the KO. Yes, the null command can lock it out of use as well, but that requires a little bit more finesse and a little bit more coordination, since it takes more old Torbs to get online, and you gotta pinpoint that radius. But for now, already into the pistol round, it's proactivity coming out of Turrets Esports, namely Yex pushing up, already pressuring this turret, pressuring the flank, and GCU doesn't even know what lies on the other side.
Well, going ahead and at least ignoring the fact that we were scanned by production, I do not actually see a Deadlock on the agent compositions here. We're looking at a double Sentinel on both sides, so it's kind of tried and true, but we're really expecting that the double Gecko is something that we're kind of obviously looking at, considering that it's going to be brought by both teams. The one thing that's going to go ahead, at least give leniency towards, going to be that plant starting things off, the wingman doing what you typically are used to, and the wall. That's a bit unfortunate from the defensive side, going ahead and putting things down, but I mean, it was the attacker wall already going ahead, being pushed up, and giving that leeway and giving that protection for both sides. With GCU not really having their Sage available anymore, it comes down to Yex coming around on this flank, trying to find the shots of the Sheriff, and can manage 3 in the meantime, and the rest of the team, quite frankly, who cares where they're scattered about? There's so much chaos going on behind you, you just don't know how to react.
They were just a distraction, yeah. I mean, yes, they take the spotlight with that 3K, but you got the double barrier wall up, and on pistols, you're not going to get past Flaps sticking that defuse, even if Yex had fallen a little bit earlier. Regardless, the nice pinch play comes out, and yes, while we don't see the deadlock, the KJ should have been an early indicator that that was coming, yet they weren't able to handle it. So I want to take another look at these compositions so I can reground myself without having that deadlock to see how things shape up. And I mean, it's just gonna be Terps. They going back to their old comp is what they did. Yeah, this is a travesty. No even double Gecko either. We've been lied to twice.
I'm over this. I'm quitting. I'm quitting after the series. We're done. But I mean, regardless though, still, I mean, it's Icebox. What are we doing? We're just going back to the standard. Sure, we had a moment of excitement there, but I mean, we can't really expect anything all that crazy considering that, well, it's Icebox. It's been around in the game for so long now, and even with the adjustments that were made when the map was rotated out, coming back into it, it's just more so getting acclimated to those changes a little bit more so. When you do have the kind of traditional mindsets of this game, but even then you do have the more modernistic, adaptive mindsets like we see in that Gecko, and more so I think we see in the T1 scene. So I think honestly Gecko's a good pick, but even then still, Yex on that Outlaw, able to go ahead and be a good pick as well with the Sheriff. Getting 3 in the last, you're already starting off with 1 here to start things in this one. But looking for some squeeze throughs, and you're just not really finding it. GCU meeting a massive wall that is this Terps Esports squad. Can't really find a gap here inside of this defense. And even then, when they do actually want to go for a side execute, they know the A is not going to be the right move, so might as well just opt for a little bit of utility on that B site.
Yeah, even getting the plant down here would be huge. The only issue that we see is right around the corner. Yeah, Eugene is lying in wait. You might have had a guard, but the Spectre makes quick work of both of you to keep that semi-flawless round online for Terps Esports. And what I want to point out is the fact that Icebox is that map that gets the most use, I feel like, out of this new weapon, this Outlaw. And it was shown beautifully by but not only Yex sporting it, but Flaps, and both of them get the first blood, the second frag, and it completely allows them now to have these extra weapons where you now have to force the team members of GCU Grand Canyon University to buy these full shields when, maybe they would have wanted to go light shields so they could get a heavier investment the following round. But nope, cannot do that. That threat is lurking. The question is where? Yex on this aggressive position here, pipes, and you can already see Envy's cautious, but will they breach it? Ooh.
So I want to get out of that one, considering already, Volt having that outlaw matchup won in the last round, not really winning things in this one, but you do find an even trade at least on the Spartacus to go ahead and get some damage down on field. But the players still going in the direction of GCU. They have the rifles, they have the benefit and the luxury of automatic guns. So what are they going to do? They're going to spray, they're going to see smokes, and they're just going to get that spike down while clicking. And quite frankly, people are going to run into that, and you're going to see a round win finally being surmounted off the back of it. With 3 rifles being carried over to the next, it's a good stance for them, but Terps Esports, you're expecting a little bit more out of them, considering the guns that were at hand. But with the X already warming up on that outlaw, I am quite surprised to see that we're already seeing an operator come into the play here very early on in the game, to where, I mean, yes, if we're going to be setting this expectation of an early operator, you know that more than likely we're going to be seeing a lot more outlaws probably out of this player, because it's got to be a comfort pick.
I'm hoping. I've seen it be a core of a defense that a team cannot get past, can never shut down in a half. What's interesting to me is this forward pressure, this kind of attention grab of the Sage pushing on the zip line. It was supposed to be this kind of collapse over Yex, but instead they still spot it out, they still take it out, and now Flaps has to hold down the forefront. Battle Sage mode activated. Not only do they find the trade, but now they are doubling down on it. Barrier wall, the high ground advantage in their favor, eye in the sky, and they are not done looking for these frags.
Screwball coming into play here, looking to not only find yourself a little bit of escalation off those pipes, but also just going ahead and doubling down on it, making sure to just be an absolute oracle of death here, a little bit of a VTOL, but considering that 4 players remaining on the side of Terps Esports, they don't, quite frankly, even need a queue for a rotate. That KJ is going to live through the round no matter what, unless we see a rotation on the side of GCU's behalf. I don't think that's going to really happen. 46 seconds left on the clock, and considering the flank is already coming underway, you can tell, I mean, a little bit that they kind of want to hold stuff out. They don't want to go too crazy here. They just want to hold their grounds, keep that line of scrimmage set, and, well, see if anybody wants to finally extend. With the Dizzy coming out, the W key being pressed, Flaps knows that, well, I just got to get ready for the player swinging off the back of it. There they are, just beating it.
Yeah, nice little high load, close things out. They recollect the operator, so you actually have another opportunity to put it to good use. But again, that round really hinged on Flaps' ability to pick up the slack there. Yes, Spartacus on the re-rotate, reinforce the side hold alongside them to close out the round, but those are the quick adjustments you need on the defense to walk away with rounds like these on Icebox. So this round, like I said, Yex back to their operator ways, the rest sporting those rifles. What's interesting is the buy from Grand Canyon's a little all over the place. You have these close quarters players like Nit and Envies with the stingers, and the rest are forcing up those rifles. So if this round they lose, it's gonna be a rough turnaround, because you're already going to be looking at 5 for Terps Esports Lotus potentially out of that eco round that would ensue.
Yeah, I think this round, I mean, obviously going ahead and being a little bit of a kind of, not definitive, because we can't really cast or curse anything, but at least saying the likelihood between these two teams, it makes sense to just be opting in of the Terps Esports squad able to squeeze this one out. But already looking at the amount of just momentum, and even then just space gained from the side of GCU, it's looking pretty likely they could find themselves some matchups and some fights that go in their direction, considering these close quarter fights are going to be just more and more favorable as the time goes on. And, well, with at least a singular Vandal picked off the body, that's enough to go ahead and completely flip things on a turn of its head and give Terps Esports a run for their money, saying, well, actually your money's running, so you need to catch up to it because you're going to buy once more, and I don't know if you really had the budget for it.
I mean, that round looked like it was so much in Terps Esports' favor at first. I mean, numbers of advantage with the KO down. You saw Nate trying to pick them up, which means it was one less player in the fight. But suddenly they had the support of, Sipe there. They had Nate just somehow the fastest draw ever pull out their weapon and find those frags. So they keep, like you said, GCU in it economically. They now force the save out of Terps Esports, and while they do have some weapons to lean into, while they now have the Bladestorm online thanks to Yex's aggression, Astro's now been first blooded. So you got to get creative here, and that creativity is going to come potentially from a forward position from Flap. But nothing.
Yeah, I'm just really excited to see really what GCU is going to do in terms of adapting around to Terps Esports and their aggressive starts they like to find in these early antsy A picks. But I mean, even then they've already gone ahead and traded those off very successfully on a much more consistent basis, and even then more so have made sure to just kind of flex themselves out a little off the back of it, because on a round like this where you do see a bit of an eco coming out from the likes of Terps Esports, they want to answer back. the same exact answer, or to the same exact degree that we saw in the last round that GCU successfully found. But quite frankly, being in a post-plant situation with all these guys just stacked up back towards yellow, this is a post-plant on Icebox with your Viper alive for at least a second, but, well, it could be a Sheriff that puts that all to rest with another Ice Wall coming through. Timing there, the Nano Swarm and the Fragment not able to touch. It's a stick and a clutch here from Flaps to just answer things back.
I'm not gonna lie to you, Mick. When I saw the original plant location, when Eugene was pushing this site, I was like, can't they just tuck beside the box and stick it with how deep it's planted? Like, even without the Sage Wall, they would not have been able to get shot. And then Flaps just doubles down with that extra security, and yeah, they stick it all the way through. Both the Fragment, the, Swarm Grenade not going deep enough, and that's one way to steal a Thrifty out the gate and get that economy righted. Yes, another opportunity on the right side with the Operator again. GCU has disrespected it before. They look like they are about to attempt that again.
I'm excited to see really what Terps Esports can do now with these guns back in their hands, but even then still, Yex is always going to be setting up with these guns, but Flaps opening things up very aggressively once more. We talked about this A aggression. We've seen it on a round-to-round basis, and it's been so darn successful for Terps Esports, but every single time GCU gets a read, it's only on a singular player. We see that Operator now being in their hands. We know that that nuisance is there of that jet, but it's such an intimidating factor. It's such a focal point that you kind of tunnel vision onto that and forget about everything else, which is just like an absolute dismantling that is the rest of the Terps Esports crew to just kill out GCU nearly with little to no answer. I mean, it's Flaps obviously pushing up again and again on that Sage, because why would a Sage be pushing up and fighting us aggressively? We already met the Jet. The Jet's going to be that front line, right? Well, that's a curveball that you never really expect coming at you.
It could just be partially because you have that confidence with the double sentinel that if you fall, you're going to have somebody else maybe to pick up the slack in that regard. But a Sage and a KJ are such different beasts on Icebox. The KJ is supposed to keep track of rotations, keep track of lurk players with turrets and alarm bots towards mid, towards mains. And that Sage is more a retake-based sentinel, or like you said, that battle Sage, which is the approach that Terps Esports has been taking. And with Yex not able to find the mark on this Operator just yet, whilst trying to pin down the positions, the swings, the confidence of GCU, it's giving them that flexibility to try new things because they have the dependable sentinel, a dependable player of Flaps, but not this round at least.
Yeah, that's a round where, I mean, obviously you're trying to go for something crazy. You're looking for a little bit of denial, and if anything, you just kind of overextend in the meantime because of it. But already Yex providing a little bit of assistance to the rest of the team, giving that Guardian Angel sense there to find one kill. But, I mean, you're tailwinning immediately out after the back of that. And even then with Thrash off after you, quite frankly, you don't want to be sticking around too long. With the Operator having to be here now in a retake situation, Wingman getting that plan down, the likes of the GCU roster are just, well, sure, going to put a couple players up forward to try and get these kills. But quite frankly, isn't even going to worry about that. Get a clean house of the rest of the crew, saying that, sure, you can use an ultimate. We're going to use one as well, but it seems like yours was wasted.
You know, that felt very rushed, very scrappy retake attempt there. I liked the, hunker down approach from Spartacus, but Envy is that thoroughness there. Ensures that round does not slip away for them. So GCU, again, not letting Terps Esports time too many rounds together. So yes, they have the lead, but it feels like it's only for a temporary amount of time. They keep going through these eco cycles and somehow winning Thrifties that keep that edge over Grand Canyon University. But with each passing one, GCU is going to learn and adapt. And so far, this is another play out of the playbook that I might not see coming if I was GCU. 4 members towards mid.
I think, honestly, I mean, we've seen the aggression coming out so much. We see this initial war happen towards that side of the map every single round. Just see if they can knock some players out, knowing that aggression from Terps Esports is just kind of predicted at this point, expected, quite frankly. So knowing that not only we're seeing a bit of a switch up, them come out towards the middle of the map and trying to bring the fight there, it's a very, very quick call to be made for GCU to say, just press the gas pedal, head over towards the days out of the map that we love so darn much, and nobody's really there to contest us for it. So it should be a free plant, and even then, they're not on the best buy, so it should also be a free post on the back of it.
I'll agree with you, but we've seen Eugene and Yex in these positions with these deagles. We know they have the aim to back it up if the shots, if the stars align. Unfortunately, all 3 members alive have post-plant mollies to work with, and flashes, and so much utility just to deny time to not give you these fights. Flashpoint high, tap on. Envy's just not even going to take the opportunity to peek until absolutely necessary. And when they do, it's alongside their teammates. Nate gets the cleanup, and suddenly we are looking at only 1 round separating these 2 squads on map 1 of Icebox.
Yeah, if there's going to be a thrifty or at least a miracle in terms of the buys for really clutching things up, it's going to be on the attacking side from GCU on the A side of the map. If we're going to see any kind of resilient play and just a miracle occur for Terps Esports, it's going to be more out in the open when you have less corners to clear and you're just, well, throwing down ice walls to protect what will be a clutch stick. So, quite frankly, seeing the actual lineups and the fights that are occurring here in the map, well, I mean, there's still something. There's still fights that we can expect to be leading, and there's fights that are expected to be won. But you got to be ready for them. No matter whether or not you think you're going to win or lose them, you need to know where they're coming from. And NECC taking a little bit of a different approach here. Not on that operator anymore, on the Vandal now, able to go ahead and find that early pick. And when you're expecting that kind of pipe peak every single time you're taking it slow, you're just lining yourself up for the guy if he changes ever.
Yeah, that's a nice change of pace. They've been losing that first confrontation a lot for Terps Esports this round. It's one out. You force the rotation, force him to Astro, who should have had this stronghold on the site, but the support cross map from Spartacus, that Hunter Spirit comes in a little bit late, so it's not going to deny the plant. It's not going to deny this Viper's Pit, and that null command means you cannot dump a bunch of utility into contest either. That means frags for GCU still being collected here, and Flap just has to wait for that suppression to expire for the reinforcements, the rest of their team to arrive, and I don't even know if it will, because Nate's holding down this flank pretty hard.
I mean, you've already had one of the players kind of slip through there, but still, it's not even Nate really holding that down. It's Dino able to go ahead and get the read on Spartacus. So Nate to win that matchup that we expected on the NECC, but Flaps being alive and well, it's only going to last for so long. That null command being up so consistently here for GCU, we've seen very, very clean rounds on both rounds they've been executed. Over towards that A site, winning off the back of what would be an eco and almost nearly a thrifty, all things considered. And even then now, over towards that B site, it looks like that ultimate alone is a very foundational key to the success of GCU in getting these rounds. And it kind of feels like a get out of jail free card, quite frankly, with the way that they know that Terps Esports are going to be popping on these ultimates and just pressing these utility buttons just to answer things. If you're on the B site where, you know, it's only usually a kind of a lurking KJ sitting around, the denial isn't really the only issue there. And a free Viper's Pit off the back of it, who cares if all that utility is still wandered about? But speaking of wandering about, wandering right up to the line of scrimmage, onto the spawn line as we flaps with that judge, swapping sides of the field and not really finding too much of a result besides that singular kill.
I do not know how Flaps was not awarded more there. I mean, yes, you get the trade, but Volz, on the other hand, just holds down the fort for GCU, keeps things in contention, keeps things even on a 3-on-3. In the meantime, Eugene snuck up, but they are a second late from wrapping around that corner to the safe haven that would have been mid-control. That means now numbers advantage in Grand Canyon University's favor ever so slightly because of how low Volts is after being that battle stage not once, not twice, but 3 times. Question is, can they beat the rotation? Can they shut things down? All this way it's going to be on Spartacus, and they hit the one shot that they needed to even things up. They back out. They're going to play time as much as possible, play this toxic screen, any advantage like a decay that they can get, and with 45 seconds left, yeah, if you're GCU, why would you fight into that?
Yeah, just playing it slow and steady, understanding that wall, that's a line that you want to respect. You, quite frankly, get all the time in the world to make that rotation. And even then, it's a big gamble you're willing to take. You know, players are already present over here towards A, so you're saying best case scenario, nobody's on B. Worst case scenario, one person's on B. And if we're taking it in a 2v1 approach, we should be winning that fight, or we can at least take the numbers, right? To get that trade off and then find ourselves in a 1v1. And considering the kind of buys that are in the hands of Terps Esports, you have yourself an advantage whenever things really get down and dirty. But considering right now that you make that rotate no matter what, you put Terps Esports on the back end, trying to play for this retake together, it's the guns. Still with these sheriffs, sure they look good, but it's a setup now. You still have that sentinel alive. You have that turret to give yourself the comms necessary, and you got, well, 2 players alive and well for a very, very easy pinch just coming right from that enemy spawn. So 6-5 GCU, considering that they started it on the back foot of this entire game, they very quickly made work of this half and guaranteed themselves at least an even one at the worst case.
Yeah, they were not going to fall for the same mistake twice. No ninja defuses coming out this time from Terps Esports. So they are in the hot seat to look to close things out 6-6. Mind you, this was their map pick, but I mentioned it's a little bit more of a coin toss for them. So they might have anticipated this going in to the map. But what they might not anticipate is Nate here with this operator. They're like, Yex, let's show you how it is done. But will they expect them on yellow? The high ground position provides the first blood. Yes, your ankles are broken, but that's nothing that Flaps cannot fix. But what else can be fixed? The resurrection onto Envy. So last round, might as well use it. And now we are once again even 5-on-5.
Talking about even that operator, I mean, sure, being there, being a presence, but somewhere else in the map, it really comes down to EX once more, not on that operator. I think there's a much bigger influence here in this round, already going ahead and getting that first blow with the Blade Storm and swapping sides towards that B half of the map. And even then, able to get a free little bit of a rotation through if you feel like it. With that Viper's Pit being there, quite frankly, GCU are just completely respecting this. Knowing it's the last round, they're already playing a little more reserve, considering that they just invested that Resurrection. And they're making a little more leeway towards the A side of the map. With that Owl Drone coming out, that gives you all the information you need to know to say, there's at least 3 here. We're going to need some more backup. And they sure are taking their time to get it done, that they're more than likely just playing for a retake at this point.
I was curious why they had 3 members on B when there was a Viper's Pit, but maybe they just have that trust in Eugene to hold things on with this toxic screen in play. They are single-handedly holding down the site, but again, it's going to be a shutdown after they find the thoroughly post plant product. They've Moss granted only Stipe with this the snake bites are alive, but now they have Thrash to work with, so a tap up ult, and suddenly time is being bought.
Last player
I mean, just really delaying here, having the extra bodies on hand. I mean, it's not even Eugene, the revived player, that was able to go ahead and get those extra kills. It was more so just a blessing from Flaps saying, you did your job. You seem like you're heating up there, buddy, to get right back into the fray. And let's see if we can keep that thing rolling. But you just don't really have all the health in the world. So let's give you a couple bodies at the wall, a little bit of armor tucked on top of it, and just stick it in the meantime. And we'll see if we can close ourselves out another round. And that's exactly what they did to reach a 6-6 half. So, I mean, Icebox, that coin flip that you mentioned here coming into the map to start off with is living up to that tail already. I mean, just finding that equilibrium here to start things off. I'm expecting that same relative result here coming into the second half, because it's not really a game where we feel like we've made too many adjustments or read the opponent too many times and kind of seen these shifts and how the ideologies work. It more so just comes down to these two teams understanding Icebox to just such a heavy degree that you just got to win your fights, plain and simple. It really comes down to the mid-round calling over anything else.
Yeah, but this half's going to be a little bit more interesting, right? We didn't even really point this out because we had those composition changes we weren't anticipating, but
Yeah.
Grand Canyon University has no duelist, all right?
Right.
And they got 6 rounds on their attack. So now they're on the defense where this double sentinel should thrive. And what's interesting to me is they're doubling down on aggression that you wouldn't expect with this kind of composition. A pistol round, and they're already going for this pinch play. They have so much information that this is going to be a B execute, that there's no hope of a rotation from Terps Esports, but they're also being proactive. They're also trying to pressure past the boundary that is this toxic screen, and Yax Tailwind's going to maintain that control for now.
Able to go ahead and at least already start things off pretty well here from GCU. I mean, making sure to find themselves a 3-0 exchange in terms of the bodies on the board. And with Flaps being in a situation where, quite frankly, you were in between a rock and a hard place, that being the edge of the map, and, you know, 4 remaining GCU players, you're more than likely going to be falling there in the meantime. But GCU, I mean, that Sentinel approach that they found themselves into, no real duelist. We do still see the KO being employed that could be somewhat of a pseudo-duelist, being that main re-entry for the post-plants when you really get down to it. So, considering that they are starting off on the right foot, giving themselves a weapon advantage, that's really what's going to make this that defense seem much more formidable, considering that you have these bigger weapons and that you can't really break that too much. So you don't see the utility setup that GCU could have planned in their back end to make sure these sites are that much of a nuisance to approach. Terps Esports, though, I'm excited to see what Yex can do more so now with that Vandal in hand. Now being, you know, on a Marshall, obviously, but being so heavily lenient into those snipers on that defensive side of the map, this is where you got to make that adjustment to say, I can't scope in anymore. I have a Marshall, sure, for this round, but going forward, we saw some potential out of the Vandal. We're going to have to see it consistently on this half and see some real breaches.
For now, a little bit slower of an approach since they lost that pistol round. They almost got the timing right, but again, Eye in the Sky have been positioned this time for Grand Canyon University. Shuts one player down. There was this kind of force mentioned, Yax with the Marshall, and because of that, they don't want to give any of these angles over now that the smokes have faded, now that those recharge cycles are underway. But still, this slower approach, and if they have the barrier wall, this could be a plant coming in. Oh, it's going to be actually the Swarm Grenades to secure it.
Just playing it slow, working for a little bit of denial here, just delaying things and already getting that spike plant audible off. You have ample time there to get that exchange, to get that rotation queued in, and already we see, well, what would typically be called an answer into the bell that is going to be that spike plant going down. Instead, it could be an overinvestment. We saw the spike wanting to rotate there, going back towards that spawn, but by the time you actually get around to acquiring that space, getting some of these kills, theoretically, it's going to be a bit of a toss-up still. But one thing that's just guaranteed is, well, these fights. They're looking like they're pretty darn one-sided for GCU here, considering the guns at hand. You do see Flaps able to inevitably make that escape, go towards the other side of the map and say, well, if you guys are that far in and you see that many players, best case scenario, we just get an extra couple hundred creds just for the plant alone.
Oh, I love this aggressive position. 0 point spotting them out might clue them in to what's about to occur, but they know they have to go aggro in the 2v4. A little bit of chip damage off of 2 of these players makes it feasible, but they're just playing distractor. They're just trying to buy time for that killjoy, tucked away with utility, tucked away with the plant position in their favor, but the toxic screen still being up means that they can just stick it all the way. Too many angles to shoot from, and all 4 members going to survive here, making it a clean conversion, and it's going to be a contending bonus to third round of the half.
Yeah, I mean, GCU obviously being in the leg up here, considering this half and how things have gone so far. It's only 2 rounds, but I mean, just answering every single call that Terps Esports provides. I mean, we saw that force come out from the Marshall, and obviously we weren't expecting too much out of it, but we were expecting maybe 1 or 2 picks. And, well, that's all Terps Esports really found in that entirety of the round, which is a little unfortunate considering the other sheriffs that were there as backup. So knowing that you are seeing these 4 rifles now, with a little bit of quotations to that, or an exception, better yet, with that Guardian in play, I want to see what they can do now with their full force, with their full capabilities and their full kits to back off of. Because once again, I'm looking at the X, I'm saying, hey, we got to see what the potential of this player is. We got to see this guy start to light up. We got to see him just completely dismantle these defensive setups, because both sides of the map are going to have a little bit of a staller. They're going to have a warden. They're going to have a sentinel there to slow you down, and you got to have the player that's willing to just completely forget about everything and have all that trust in your initiators to just dismantle it.
Well, for now, again, it's been this slower B start round after round. This time a little bit sooner of a rotation. And they're trying to cash in on the fact that the previous rounds, it's been really fast pivots from Grand Canyon University over to that B site whenever pressure's been generated. But this round, that isn't the case. Still 2 anchoring here. Volt and Dyna ready to hold on to this A site. So that's where that hesitancy is. And I think that's coming out of the lack of the double initiate, right? You only have Spartacus. So you have to wait for this, you know, recon bolt to recharge, and you don't have that owl drone this late into the round. So I think it's going to be the double fake off of that Astra generating additional presence. And this is enough to draw the rotations to A. They're like, there's 30 seconds left. There is no way, but the IGLs made their call. KJ, Viper, both on their way back, but, you know, walls up, Swarm Grenade can't really deny, and that's the plant.
They don't really need to neglect utility if it just doesn't have the chance to even go off, if their players aren't there to get it popped. So consider that you do see already everything breached through. The one thing that really concerns me here is that Yax is trying to go ahead and find a little more aggressive and playing back towards that yellow. But even then, still, I would expect maybe your duels at this point of the game are able to kind of squeeze into those back lines, look for a couple free picks off the back of it, maybe start taking these fights to their front door. But already GCU, because of the space, just playing for the post plant, setting up this wall, getting that control and just shoving it towards that attacking side spawn. It makes for a nearly free round for sure. They didn't have the buys, but good lord do they have the shots, and 4 players to carry on those guns to the next one.
It feels like this half they're starting to run away with things. I mentioned that that lack of a duelist should have harmed them in the previous half, but them swinging away with that 6-6 is perfect situation for them now to lock in here and close things out in a steamroll fashion. I mean, it's another save, so likely double digits for Grand Canyon University, but I won't count Terps Esports out just yet. They did get that thrifty last half, so if they can pull one out here now, that would be monumental, because like I mentioned before, their map pick is starting to slip away, and they haven't really changed much up either. Again, it's this B main early pressure, the lurk from the Killjoy A, and this time they know it's a save, so you can see these members holding their ground for Grand Canyon, willing to take these fights off this poison orb one way.
I think there is a little bit of sense of urgency here and a little understanding of Terps Esports sides why you can't really count them out, is knowing that, I mean, they have already read the fact that GCU like to rotate early. They know that they're nothing but sentinels. They know they don't have too much actual retake potential, so they like to kind of meet the fight as much as possible before that post plant actually gets to that point of 100% where it's completely set up. So they say, okay, this is going to be our best shot before they really get stead still. But Terps Esports, as I mentioned earlier, I think the adaptation that needs to be made on their side at least is, at least whenever you do go ahead and breach, when you find those gaps, when you find those holes, don't just kind of sit at a line of scrimmage and set the spike there. You need to penetrate that. You need to bypass it. You need to put a player in towards the back of the map, because this speed is going to make them complacent. It's going to make them panic, and they're not going to check their corners. But in a round like this where they have full guns and you know that Terps Esports probably aren't going to get much done, you can just take the fights outright without really any concern of how these guns fights are going to go, because it's a 5v3 and you know you've already done damage to at least 2 of the other remaining players.
So for now, a retake attempt again come through for Grand Canyon. Numbers in their favor. It's just insane. Yes, these outplays have worked, but Spartacus in a 1v4, you again aren't going to be able to clutch out these rounds. So these rotations need to either be made a little bit sooner, or they just need to commit to a site and lean into players like I mentioned, Eugene and Yex Insane with Deagles, if they're just given the right opportunities, the right positions. And I mean, even look on the mini-map right now, you see nobody fighting for that B main presence really heavily. It's mainly, you know, them getting shut down early, or those mid lurks getting shut down. So this is a good time, I would say, for a timeout. Like I mentioned, you're back to a bye. If this is shut down, it's basically match point for Grand Canyon University. So other than what I talked about, Mick, what do you think is being discussed?
I mean, just really discussing what they've accomplished so far in this half. I mean, it was exactly what I mentioned and kind of leaned in towards in that last round. You didn't have the full potential, especially on that A site, to kind of go ahead and push all the way through back into that spawn. But over towards B, you can find a little bit more influence there underneath that kitchen or back towards that snowman. Just kind of having a player, once again, breach to penetrate those enemy lines and get to the point to where, quite frankly, they're in such a panic state they're not checking corners, where you're saying that enemies shouldn't typically be. But when you, the way it's not really, I'm not really saying they should juke them out. They're already juking them. I'm saying they need to break their ankles, quite frankly. They need to put them in a situation where they're not just at a point where they're going back and forth and they're staying on their toes. You're putting them in a point to where they're shifting so much back and forth. With your duelist there, you have the chance and you have the speed to back that up and to just completely beat them while they're down and catch them off guard. And I don't think we've seen enough actual utilization here of Yex to get into those back lines to really warrant this duelist pick. I mean, sure, it worked great with the operator, but we're not seeing it really use enough to push through that utility or to push through an enemy spawn. It's just there, right? We're just seeing it more as a bait, saying, okay, if the duelist is here, that's probably where they're going to go to the site, rather than actually using that duelist as we expected.
Yeah. And Grand Canyon has just not fallen for that bait of the duelist, indicating a full entry. I think they more so use the Sova. I mean, the Aldro getting invested is huge. Like I said, you have a single initiator, but they might be taking my advice, going for this full all-in commitment, dueling for control over the site, disrespecting the toxic screen and barrier wall, but Envy's goes huge to shut out Terps Esports, and finally, that call has been made. They fall off, but in the meantime, we've seen now that Viper scaling for Grand Canyon. Now they have no way out, and, you know, Sipes gonna know.
With a good little pick there on site, you get some equilibrium in the numbers, and finally, with some good trades going down, it comes to a situation between Astro and this Gecko in the back of the map. You don't have a wingman to give yourself that leeway to get that spike down while you take the fight. Meanwhile, Gecko sure as heck does, so that can be definitely useful in the post plant, and the defuse going off there, but Thrash, more than likely not going to be invested here. It's just going to be straight up, just waiting, inching out that clock, and betting on the fact that Gecko is going to be on that A site. And this is a read that I think not only Astro has, but a lot of confidence from the rest of the team, probably saying just go for the retake. He has to be here. And, well, obviously, for the luxury of our perspective, he is.
And you mentioned they aren't going to use this Thrash. If they had gone for that A execute, I think we would have seen it pulled out just to secure that 11th. Like I said, that would be the kind of final nail in the coffin to sail towards map point.
Here we go.
I could say useful information since, like you said, they don't have that wingman. But then again, Disney can fill the role for that as well if the position's placed properly. I mean, even then, Astro has the HP advantage here. Probably eager to take the fight, has a nice angle. Here, the question is how receptive. There it is, yeah. Dido, not aware how close they're playing, how aggressively forward they are. And that's the round I said that Terps Esports was desperately going to need if they wanted to keep their chances alive this path, this map.
At think realistically, I mean, seeing what happened in that last round, seeing how everything was panning out, I mean, GCU, it was finally an angle to where even then you saw it in the GCU player, you saw it specifically in Dino not checking their side of the field. It was at that point where I believed Viper would win that matchup purely because of the position being taken. You're just not expecting players on your side of the field. You're not checking your six. You're not looking back towards your spawn. You're purely looking forward because you expect Terps Esports to be respecting that line of scrimmage, which they have done so this entire half. This curveball needs to be utilized a lot more so, and I think, quite frankly, Astro's getting the best understanding of that, saying if we're going to go for these kinds of jukes, if we're going to go for these ridiculous plays and, you know, swap all over the map, let me be the one to make that breach. And there it is, already going ahead, resulting in one. Spartacus now reaching right out down center, knowing that lockdown is going to be employed here, but to find another kill with the back of it. So in a 5v3 situation, quite frankly, Terps Esports, if there's a time to press the go button on the A side, it'd be now before more people show up. But Dino is already creating a little bit of a stall.
And they haven't even leaned into that Thrash either. So what they're trying to do is clear out this rat, clear out Astro, who's lurked through kitchen, going for the backstab option while, yeah, A is being held down by this double initiator combination. But looks like the timing's going to favor Terps Esports. In the meantime, unless Envy's pulls out hero plays like that, and suddenly Spartacus, one of the players alongside Astro that opened up the round, is again left in a clutch situation, 1v3. Envy's knocking on death's door, but even if they fall, you have a Thrash, you have resources to lean into that can flip this 1v2 back in your favor.
I have the spike.
I mean, you got insurance. That's for darn sure here from GCU. But I mean, quite frankly, I don't think we're going to see the time of day where you really need to invest it. Envy's has done so much of a good job, but just literally Envy's was the backbone of that round, quite frankly. Holding down, finding those strings of kills put together, and putting enough work into that alone to where the denial and just giving all that time in the world to hunt down Astro, everyone else on site just was made quick work of. And that's why I was kind of pressing that urgency onto Terps Esports there, knowing that, well, while Astro is still an unknown variable, this is the time you have to make advantage of it. They're checking their six. They're looking all around. They're in their panic state. And you're not capitalizing off of this moment that's being presented anywhere else on the map. They know you're in a four-man situation. They know where that other guy is. It just comes down to, well, are you going to win the fight and put the pressure on him? Speaking of pressure, though, starting off here very aggressively once more. Envy's not playing towards that A side, opting over Horde into B. And, well, with the rest of the team here as backup, it makes sense. But it's an eco from Terps Esports, so you can't really give them too much credit. You just got to, well, know players right down the middle and just knock them down.
Yeah, they took advantage of that mid gap that Astro had identified last round. This round, it's an ironclad defense of all things mid-focused. And with 4 ultimates, Spartacus on the 1v4 with only a deagle to their name, it would take a miracle to get this round under Terps Esports belt. So we're going to be looking at a potential map point here. They've already used their timeout this half, so really is just do what damage you can, and that's a team ace to show how this has truly been a team effort for Grand Canyon University to get this map on their side.
I'm just excited to see what happens in a round like this. I mean, considering it's map point, do Terps Esports feel like they're pressured enough to pop every single ultimate under the sun just to kind of compensate for some of their lacking areas of pressure here, or do they want to more so just kind of lean into the fact of, is it a moment-to-moment kind of thing, and then possibly risk missing out on using any of those ultimates because those players could get knocked off in the meantime? So with the buys not really there for them, at least in terms of Yex perspective, you're going to see that Blaze from at least popped off right on the get-go, more than likely, just to go ahead and compensate for a little bit of range. There it is, the long-range capabilities coming out to meet a couple more of these players. But the Viper, I'm sure it'll be waiting for a post-plant. Quite frankly, I don't know if you had that luxury. I think if you at least get close enough to a site where overextends into maybe a standard plant area, and you're looking fine with that. Already lockdown being employed as well. I think, honestly, this just is more an adaptive, a proactive, better yet, approach to this round. But with it being a little bit, not of a fake, but of a quick answer, GCU have a lot more resources at hand, and I think they're also a lot more effective, realistically, because that Thrash is almost like a dimensional drift. It will clear out that Viper's Pit and let you know what's going on there. So it feels like GCU just have an answer to everything here, unfortunately.
Yeah, they completely stalled out the initial site take with the Venn diagram of KJ ults on the re-exec that you mentioned. They're actually going to invest it earlier rather than later to confirm this isn't another one of their textbook fakes. In the meantime, Yex has deposited themselves below Rafters, is looking for any of those early proactive readdressments into the site. And even, like you mentioned, Pit goes out. There's no command invested just yet. They don't want to put all their eggs in one basket. They're confident they can win out against this haphazard buy, but Might as well invest it if you haven't. Pop flash in, they dive
Yep.
right in and find the frag. All of this blood and carnage results in the Viper's Pit falling. Spartacus, though, thrives when they have players at their side, and when they aren't in that clutch scenario, when it is a 3vx situation, gonna be Terps Esports walking away with the round, walking away with another opportunity to advance towards that OT now at this point.
I mean, still, it's crazy. I mean, you mentioned using that Thresh early on to understand, is this another one of their fakes? But if it isn't, you just throw your Thresh right at enemy lines. Can you pick it up at that point? Realistically, I think you just play for the retake there. You have the null command to work with. You have the Thresh. You have the Viper's Pit to pop around a corner to just create this massive Venn diagram. Not only the lockdowns that we saw earlier, but it's just green on green on green, and just everybody's decaying at the end of the day. And your KO, which doesn't do a down but not out stage, has the advantage realistically. But as it stands so far, Flaps already going ahead and having to compensate for one of the early losses of this team. Seeing a knockdown to the EX, there goes your duelist. How much aggression can you really just mitigate here? And honestly, with a Viper's Pit here, and if they really want to chow it, the answer could be all of it.
Knowing this team and how rotate heavy they've been historically, though, it doesn't seem like it's in the cards. What's interesting to me, though, is this forward aggression that's actually come out from the get-go towards B main. So they know that they haven't rotated just yet, that it could be a fake, it could be mid-pressure once the wall and, you know, the stage have been conquered. So really, it's still up in the air with less than a minute left about where this team is going, and they might not even get the choice. Dino grabs the frag, backs out now that numbers advantage has been evened.
And Spartacus is now just kind of the foundation of this round, quite frankly. I mean, the Resurrection coming out on Bolt there, able to go ahead and find 2 off the back of that Resurrection. It's just honestly finding numbers and dividends and just finding shining colors as a result of what was a drag of this round leading up to that point. But the Chow actually coming out here into the Viper's Pit. Spike held hostage. Even then, you're not worried about the rest of the kills. That wall is creating another distraction, forcing a lap around from Flaps in a 1v2 situation where, sure, the clutch will be made. There's no time. You have to get this plant off. But they're just waiting. They're playing time. You know, you get a wingman, you get a dizzy, you get everything here to just create the denial, be an absolute utter nuisance. And even then, with 4 seconds remaining, you got to win it here. One player can run away, and that's exactly what we see Nader doing, saying, no matter what, it's a dub here. GCU 13-8, closing out the first, giving themselves an early lead.
Just feels very much like an anticlimactic victory whenever the timer runs out, but that's exactly what was the downfall of Terps Esports on Icebox in a nutshell. They weren't decisive enough on their rotations, and they were making moves too late into the round, whether it be they had lost numbers advantage, or, as you just saw, the timer ticked away. And it's so interesting to see those no duelist compositions work in this new meta, and we definitely saw Grand Canyon use that to the best of their ability. And I really don't know what to nitpick from Terps East. It was about 50-50, like I said, the coin flip again in terms of the it just did come down to those second half adjustments coming out too late, like that abusive mid from Astro and some other kind of deeper playbook strats, since they were consistently innovating on the defense. I'll give them that.
Yeah, I think honestly, I mean, Terps Esports looking at their attacking side, that's what really needed the most work, quite frankly. I mean, GCU, they didn't really have too much intimidation leading into that second half where you felt like Terps Esports couldn't just press the W key and at least give it their best shot, especially in that third round when you know that you can really get those gears grinding. But starting things off and seeing that, well, who's going to be on firing on all cylinders? We have to rely on that duel, so we got to have that differential there because, well, they got Sentinels, obviously. They have Initiators, obviously. They have Controllers. We just had that one difference, and that's going to be the likes of Yex. And I just didn't really feel the impact of that duelist coming into play on that attacking side of the map. We saw Yex absolutely show up with that operator and with those scoped-in weapons when it came around to that first half. But once we saw Yex being sniffed out, understanding that, okay, Yex is probably going to be sitting on that pipe, so that little bit of a pixel peak. We've seen that so many times in these ranked games now that, quite frankly, it's just muscle memory where I can check it. And, well, then it's saying eventually, after losing 2 or 3 fights in that spot, you make a rotation, you get yourself a little bit of a different pick or a different angle, and then, well, it gets to that point where they're saying, all right, now we just slow down, period. This guy's going to peak no matter what it is, so it's going to be free cleanups if we just wait for a second and then make our move, no matter what. And every single time we got into a post-plant situation, we saw with that kind of setup, with no duelists and just sitting in a situation where they're just holding back, playing on that spike, and just kind of settling down, They had no problem holding that. It was just getting that spike down. That's where we saw GCU find themselves, I want to say, a definitive round every single time, besides that one crazy clutch stick that we saw. It was the exact opposite for the Terps. It was that situation where every time they got into a post plant, I'm saying, where are they going to be setting up? Where are they going to be going next? Because their post plant doesn't look nearly as strong as GCU's. While they were able to breach a couple times, it took them very, very, very long to understand how to really capitalize off that. Finally getting those players squeaking through that mid tube, going ahead and pushing up underneath kitchen, wrapping around and find themselves some presence in back snowman. They need to exercise a lot more influence there, purely just to slow GCU down on those post plant retakes.
Mm. Well, regardless, like I said, that was map one of Icebox, Mind You Terps Esports pick. And our next map up in this best of five full grand finals for Champions Nationals, we'll be going over to Split, which is another kind of conundrum because it's a map that has been played by Grand Canyon University twice. It's 2-0 for them, and it has not been played, at least in the playoffs, specifically by Terps Esports. And we saw that both of these teams have been innovating their compositions as of late. So I'm hoping maybe we'll get to see a double duelist come out from Terps Esports. Like you mentioned, one duelist in their impact wasn't enough. Maybe they run the Raise Jet because that's exactly what Grand Canyon has historically done. They typically have Dino flex from that Initiator over to the Duelist, the Raise, while we do get to see that Jet from Nate. So I'm excited to see how that works out with a full 180 from no Duelist to double Duelist if they also aren't going to pull out a change composition on us.
Yeah, I think honestly, I'm in store for it. I'm excited to see what happens to double duelists. Even then, we could see enough of a curveball, maybe a deadlock. Who knows? We'll see on the other side of this break with map number 2. Welcome, welcome, welcome back here to map number 2 of the series between the likes of Terp City Sports and GCU. A bit of a tumultuous first map, all things considered, with the first one going in, what I believe it was 13-8 at the end of everything, kind of coming in once the dust settled, in favor of GCU on Terps Esports' first map selection. A little bit awkward to say the least, but I mean, still, it's a collegiate special, so can we really freak out too much about it? I'm not saying that we expected it, but you said it was a bit of a coin toss, and that's exactly what it came up to with that first half concluding in a 6-6.
Yeah, definitely. And Split, the next up for Terps Esports for me is a dark horse map for them. They haven't played it, at least recently, in the Nationals playoffs, versus it's more of a staple from Grand Canyon University. On the other side of things, as we get to the later maps in the pool, it's going to be coming into maybe some of those stronghold maps like Ascent for Terps. So, and even Sunset, it was a good map for both teams. So, in my mind, it's either going to be we close things out 3-0 favoring Grand Canyon University, or we have to go the distance to 5. I don't know which outcome it's going to be, but I'm excited to see Split and see the composition Terps Esports is going to go for, since they really did lean into that old meta for Icebox. I'm curious to see if they're going to do the same on Split, where, like we've seen, people leaning away from a solo controller, or sorry, solo initiator with the sky nerfs, and maybe into a breach fade, or into even sometimes geckos. So what are you hoping to see from this squad?
I would love to see a fade, quite frankly. I think with Sky kind of not being nearly as potent as what she used to be, just having information that you can recycle over and over again, you're at that point where it's like, okay, maybe we could actually bring the fade back, because a haunt having just some kind of information that seems like it could be in these kind of nooks and crannies is always going to be very useful. And whenever it can be recycled over a course of a round, even makes it better, because you can go for these fakes, these kind of terp plays that we saw in that last map of Icebox, and we get to see these kind of influential, just pressure plays that we can get out of those initiators on a consistent basis. Because this map just really isn't a Sova map. There's not too many angles you can really find Sovas making use. There's so many corners. It's all just kind of nooks and crannies, and quite frankly, those darts just can't reach into every single avenue of the map. But with that being said, seeing what's going on here, now getting our agent
Do
composition.
we actually get a deadlock?
In the
I
Discord, in our
sorry.
production, we got a screenshot. I'm not even looking at the VMix anymore. I'm looking straight at our Discord. This is not photoshopped. I do not believe our producer is that good at Photoshop to whip this up that fast, because so help me God, it's in the top banner and it's real.
Oh, I'm going to be looking to Flaps to deliver upon this, and so you're robbed of that pick over on Icebox, their prime pick. But for now, they've been completely disrespected, and it's been that full-on entry from, that double duelist composition coming to rear its head, like I mentioned, out of Grand Canyon. And even the early retake attempt is shut out with some spray down through the dark cover. So numbers advantage firmly in Grand Canyon's hands when they were starting out on the attack. Terps Esports on the defense.
Yeah, heavy hitting start here for the side of GCE. I mean, going ahead, getting things on a roll and a rumble, considering with that double duelist kind of set up. I mean, even then after the back of what was going to be that now victory them for that first map. I mean, why not go ahead and just press the W key? The confidence is already there, and even then with a double duelist, I mean, what is really holding you back from not pressing that key, quite frankly? And it could be those Sentinels on the side of Terps Esports, but it's not going to do anything in this first round because, well, you don't have that much money to work with. But you do have a lot of antsiness, you do have a lot of confidence, and you definitely have a first round for GCU to start things off here, to get things rolling and get yourself a bye. And better yet, get yourself a little bit of a switch up. I will say, usually a lot of teams like to hit that B site to start things off. So I like the fact that they're kind of, not doing the tried and true that everybody's so used to.
Well, they are obviously running the meta composition. I hate that we don't get to see our Sentinel picks, but Flaps picking up the slack in that regard. But my concern is that they aren't that kind of Sentinel that's meant to ironclad hold down a site. They're more for, in my mind, those aggressive attack post plans. So the fact that they're providing this level of support actually off of the GravNet is insane. Unfortunately, there was no Yex, there was no nade in combination with it. So the members for Grand Canyon getting out unscathed, and we're probably going to see a late round capitalization of this potential Omen lurk that's been happening through mid from Saipan. Let's see if the Viper of Eugene can shut it down. Perfect shot.
And a big gun. As a reward for your efforts, able to go ahead and upgrade up to Bulldog in the meantime. Sure, it's not a Phantom or a Vandal, but there is a Phantom up for grabs somewhere here, but you just gotta wait for that gun to push up, get close enough, and put yourself at that one-shot threshold of a headshot of anybody else. Flaps, holding out that angle. The Rays kind of peeking back and forth. You know that eventually somebody's gonna go ahead and blindside you, and who better than it to be Flaps once more. Just being an utter nuisance in this round with that wall, setting up with that Viper, just completely capturing the likes of GCU, riding their tracks to start with. But Volt, it comes down to 1v2 situation, able to clutch out things to some degree, but still, with those flashes, they're not going to be available like they used to anymore. And Astro warranted an upgrade earlier to that Bulldog. And what did he say? How about that? We'll take one more. We'll get a Vandal at the end.
I mean, we saw them throw a Thrifty into the mix. Over on Icebox. Not surprised that they're able to get it out here. And while the round started out a little bit iffy in terms of coordination there, that late round play, you know, the bait with the anti-flash from Flaps into a frag, and even just the hero play there from Eugene to hold down mid control, ensure there wasn't that backdoor option towards B, puts them right back in the driver's seat, full rifles across the board as well. So they are going to have a really strong chance of getting that second and that lead back in their favor right out the gate.
Yeah, I mean, just seeing really the effort here by Terps Esports. If there was a round to win, quite frankly, in the early game for this entire half, that will be the one to do it. Already going ahead and diminishing GCU's economy, where you see them right back on the classics. Even if they lost this, we would see somewhat of a buy, maybe Sheriffs or something, knowing it was going to be a round win and knowing they're in the attacking side for the extra 300 credits. But they didn't even find the plant. So that's another thing to consider. They are missing out on so many credits here that they're just kind of hemorrhaging this game to start things off. And while they're trying to make themselves a pretty good play, all things considered with these classics in hand, we did not see this game plan in round one. And that's because they still found so much success naturally. But they want to circumnavigate that A site now if they're ever to hit it again, because knowing that Deadlock's there, it's something that you're not used to. But whenever it's in practice, it is a nuisance. But even then, still, Eugene is one of those as well, already sitting inside that bottom ropes and saying, anybody who wants to come into my area, I'm a controller, so that's exactly what I'm going to do, and holding down this area.
My concern is that with that B main aggression we saw from Terps Esports, they have spike control.
Yep.
So what they were doing with Nader and Dino is just trying to get that weapon to maybe provide a hero play. With it falling short, though, you know, Envy is going to be left in the 1v5, only classic to get the job done. And their hope would be to find at least one or two here, but neither is going to come to fruition. A flawless round to keep rifles in their hands to ensure that fourth round's not even going to be a bonus. It's going to be a full carryover of rifles to go head to head with the first full buy coming out from Grand Canyon after that Thrifty was robbed of the second round. So we'll have to see if they, you know, can clash back now that it's equal footing for both squads. But you mentioned it, A-site defensive hold from a Deadlock is a nuisance, and they are about to try fighting head force into it. I want to see this coordination between NECC and Flaps here, Mick.
And even then, already has that grab just ready over to the light, just waiting for someone to kind of go ahead and get things. I mean, that Sonic Detonator just waiting to, oh, snap, and there you go. A little bit of a stun, a lockdown, and, well, a couple of players just kind of stopped in their tracks, questioning whether or not they really want to make that approach once more. And, well, as you can tell from the minimap, they're holding out on exactly that. Waiting to see if Envies can kind of make a play here through the middle of the map before anything else occurs. And knowing that the timing is here and seeing the Astros coming up that rope, I think they're going to be too distracted with what's going on in front of them to really think about ropes and think about that flank. But you still have another rotating player coming around on the flank back towards spawn. But Astro still, regardless of the player winning this, regardless of Envies, if the timing is there, the shots go off, it's still one. Astro just has a 6th sense here inside this game, and, well, has half of that in terms of kills in that round alone with the From the Shadows ready to roll.
I mean, I don't know if that was a comment from somebody else or if you mentioned, like you said, a 6th sense from them personally, but it makes sense. You have a double controller. If there's going to be a lurking agent, it's either going to be that Omen or that Viper. Omen had been taken care of. Envy's that last potential candidate for the job, so they take that due diligence, they clear out behind them, since I know Rams has now been dealt with by the remainder of their team, and these are the kind of rounds that we needed to see for Terps Esports to get back on the map. Unfortunately, though, GCU not going to take things lightly. They are going to go for this more aggressive stance, right? Deepen that playbook, even if you have worse weapons, a full-on investment right into Spartacus. And Astro has their back, has their trade, and keeps the numbers advantage aplenty off the decay from that snake bite. And that's a full closeout from Grand Canyon University's B attempt.
That was such an easy call to make. You little goober. I heard that shadow step. You're not getting past me, and more than likely, you're also vulnerable from the snake bites. It's an easy swing to be made, but a great cross up there, considering that Astro was there for the hold, making sure that Trey followed through, even then a little bit of a slippage there, considering that you did see this guy's hands be exposed inside that smoke for a second, letting you know that, okay, obviously to swing out to the left, somebody's going to be close, but everybody else on Terps Esports not really giving up anything, quite frankly. GCU find themselves in such a tough spot to get themselves onto this site, and knowing that even then, while Volt has a spike and has real estate to go anywhere on the map, well, where's it going to take it? Right into the area of the map where you got two players playing an over-under.
So Terps Esports finding a similar lead to what they had. But this time it's not, 2-2 here and there with sparse rounds from Grand Canyon. It's dominance, a streak of 4 after that Thrifty flipped GCU's game plan on its head. And it's so ironic, right? You see these compositions, you expect them to be powerhouses on one half, and then it's the other half they find success on. With a double duelist, you'd expect the attack to be the strong suit for Grand Canyon thus far, but right now they're the ones trailing by 3 and consistently trying different strategies to see what's going to stick against Terps Esports, and nothing has.
Well, that's just because they never really made their way back to the A side, right? I mean, we see that GCU, they look so good and kind of starting off. If they find themselves at aggression and kind of hit like a wave, they can really make a running inside of a round. But it comes down to the denial, to whenever they get slowed and stalled over and over and over again. But with that initial pick going over towards the A side, and knowing that, well, the deadlock is dead, you're kind of making a call to where maybe MVs can pull something off here. Maybe somebody can slip through the cracks and get something done. But you're just hemorrhaging so many players towards this middle side of the map and towards the B side. And that's where the spike is, quite frankly. I mean, to make sense, that's where the majority of the players are. You just don't know if it's the right call to be made yet to say, okay, this is clear. We can make these plays. Because they don't really know that Yex has an operator until, well, MVs is picked off from it.
The operator didn't get its time in the sunshine over on Icebox, so why not try it again when you have a second duelist to lean into? Seekers try to track down Nader. It could be an indicator for Yex to reposition to hold down this angle. Tailwind in towards main instead means that they have to bob and weave around screens just to pin down this Jet, and they are going to be able to a quick little 3K to make up for all the rounds lost over on Icebox. And Terps Esports continues their dominance, continues racking up rounds here on their defense.
Yeah, already going ahead and get things ready. I mean, knowing that, Yex, sure, we've seen Chambers on this map before looking to hold things down the middle, but I mean, considering that, well, you're sacrificing a bit too much running a chamber here when you could just, hey, we get a raise that can play both sides of the map, and, if they opt, just play it a little more back. Don't get too aggressive with it, all things considered, and honestly, when we get around to the attacking side, and for post plants, better yet, you have utility that'll funnel players out into your line of sight. You're not waiting for them and kind of playing more reactively. You're playing proactively, and we see that once more in this round, pushing right up the middle, looking for an early head, and quite frankly, it shows itself.
Yeah, I mean, the rotations to reinforce the hold Eugene has on mid has been tenfold. Even going to be a further validation from the Trailblazer here. And I'm surprised that we aren't getting that air of confidence for these members to push, like we saw last round was punished. And as I speak it, I've wielded into the Caster Curse existence by both Eugene and Spartacus falling to these Deagles. And that's enough frags to invest the Bladestorm to try and get a Thrifty on the table. And all signs, indicators are pointing towards it. I mean, yes, there's an operator on B. Yes, there's a Bladestorm.
Oh!
But so a 2v3 is feasible if
they don't want to push B anymore. They know Yex is there. And I'm sure, I am positive, after hitting a shot like that, your Jet is mauling in the comments, saying, okay, he's just disgusting. It is what it is. Alrighty. Guess we're going to have to do something else about that. And even then, they're taking a little slow. They actually funnel the player out a little more before they actually want to go for this full execution. They also opt for a quarter play as well. Don't go for that Sander. Don't go for the default. Don't give Yex the time of day. But Yex is still going to at least get something here. That showstopper being able to close that out. And even then, just getting timing. Quite frankly, that's what you can chalk that death down to. Because, I mean, honestly, Yex had the number and the time of day.
They're holding that angle beautifully. Flaps now in the 1v2. No sonic sensors to work with. Those were all left over on the A site. So you're trying to fake out information here instead, and it works. They get the high ground advantage on the Volt, but it means that the Viper Spit is still up and well. Envious has that weapon from the mid fight that was won. They flip that alongside that pit into a thrifty win for Grand Canyon. And I mean, that's what began this streak of rounds, was a thrifty for Terps Esports. Now, it seems that's what could end it here. Yes, you have a buy-up, so it's not like they're going to be weakened into a save for Terps Esports, but that's the kind of momentum shift you're going to be looking for. And it really did just come not even out of GCU changing anything. It was more punishing the mistakes from Terps Esports, who might have been a little confident for the scoreline being a 5-1.
Right, and I think that's kind of the biggest thing when it comes around to split is the nitty-grittiness of this map. I mean, it's almost kind of like Bind in that regard, but with a lot more close quarter fights than what you would expect, because the map doesn't really cater it towards you. It's just kind of there, and with the map and kind of how funneled it is and so many avenues, you can't help but just really push for it. Already, see natural lineups occurring in the middle of the map between a duelist and a controller of all things, and well, knowing the matchups and seeing the angles that are held and seeing even then the verticality of how it works. It's Eugene coming in on top, already closing off on those duels. But GCU have gone ahead and prepared for this situation, not only in terms of just this one map, this one time, but plenty of rounds leading up to this point, understanding that, sure, there is a lot stalling us, but we get a secondary duelist as well who has a showstopper to play with. And, well, quite frankly, we're going to take the side off the back of that. Dino popping that, finding a kill, clearing out a little more real estate, but Astro slipping past that boom bot just for a mere second. Could have been something, but with Sight already finding Eugene, I don't know if it's going to be enough. In a 2v4 situation, Terps is playing for this retake, having one player on the flank, having one come from CT. You do have a little bit of isolation between each of these players, so this is kind of a little trinity that's occurring on Sight where you just don't want to let up.
Fortunately, they don't know one's underneath rafters. An ice blind gives the door opening for Spartacus, but a paint shell is going to slam it back shut. Like I mentioned, GCU has cracked the curse. It's going to start racking up some rounds here as much as they can, damage control style, before the end of this half. And last round, you mentioned it was a great pivot, and they know they had the showstopper to lean into there for Dino. I liked Flap's quick thinking with the Annihilation. Maybe they could pluck them out of the sky before the rocket is let loose, but now that's an ultimate you don't have to go into these last few rounds of the half. So I'm expecting them to see maybe a little bit more of an A lean here, but oh, what is Terps Esports planning with these three members starting out mid?
Something. They're looking to get a little crazy with it, and unfortunately may have cooked a little too much. But enough players swung out there. Oddly, they wanted to meet them for that fight, and they are paying every last bit of the price for it. I mean, that's
for now.
Aesthetically around, almost. I mean, you see the isolation player that was there. That fight occurred down the middle of the map, and, well, you got somebody on one side, somebody on the other, and it's not even playing together anymore. It purely just comes down to Flaps, hoping that you can just survive the onslaught that is GCU and the remaining players. And, well, you get yourself one, but not a second, because Sipe is on board for Ace here coming up soon, and definitely wants to be ready for it. But it's a lurking Astro sitting about, hoping that somebody doesn't sniff them. But you're in a corner on the site that they're trying to take. You're going to be noticed.
Unfortunately, Ace is robbed away, but they've been getting their impact as a controller here nonetheless. And once again, what was a bumpy start, Grand Canyon bounces back, now staring down. I want to say last time, weren't we tied at 5-5 as well? And then we saw GCU take that sixth before Terps Esports. So if we're seeing a recreation of what occurred on Icebox, that's gotta hurt. And with the buy as well for Terps Esports, I'm thinking that's exactly the fairy tale storyline we are following head on. A nice paranoia means that they have to respect this follow through towards the main, at least temporarily, but some information confirmed with that from the shadows. It looks like they want to cancel and maybe rotate. There's again this heavy mid stack, and Yex, a judge in mail, lies in wait.
Trailblazer can go ahead and get an idea that that player exists, and that'll be big. But, I mean, that's just not the case already. Yex just sitting in that corner, hoping that players will extend enough to just find yourself a bit of just an absolute run-through. But even then, we see these fights, you may be opting in for a smoke to some extent, hoping that players just don't extend there, going for the ropes, and maybe finding a rotation towards A. But they want to take this fight so badly, and I think Terps Esports understand that. They're saying, honestly, take it every day of the week. Yex is now fine too, pushing for a third. What's it really matter there? It's a third. close it out. I mean, off the back of that, you got to be real. I mean, you got to understand that I think GCU have now learned the lesson to where, well, as much as they want to be taking these fights, if it looks like they don't have to, in some situations, they can just keep on going. I mean, that was just kind of a big stare down for what felt like at least a solid 10, 15 seconds with just shots being scattered about where you can be making some leeway somewhere else.
In GCU's defense, Terps Esports did such a good job concealing the fact that Yex was there with the judge. They know it's a save round. They're expecting to have better weapons in that confrontation, in that quote-unquote stalemate on mid, that if they keep peeking, eventually they're going to win that fight. But Terps playing that perfectly, just aiding forward. And now, again, the faster they execute, yes, you get through. Yes, you get to ramps, but a mesh wall is going to, you know, partition the players now for GCU. And my concern is that nobody from Terps Esports challenged into it, the numbers advantage that they would have generated. So now all of that utilities impact has been whittled away. And yes, you've had the rotation read correctly, but I don't even want to talk about how Envies is this deep in a B.
I mean, just all the way. Just going on an own little adventure towards the back of the map. Understand that instead we could wait for a little bit of a flank, but considering there's so much already resistance that's set up here on this A side of the map, you don't want to go for that. You let Envies make the play, set the denial, and just get a full force here into the site where it just comes down purely to that one lurking about Astro to just create it enough of a stall where GCU can't make the play. But that's a lot to ask from a singular guy. I mean, let's be real. I'm not saying it couldn't be done, but it is a lot to ask for. And when the site is finally taken control of, even then I love the discipline from Envies. Backing up, not extending into site or towards that spawn and just holding on to it forever. There's a risk of being flanked there, obviously, through the middle of the map. But now you see Eugene taking over that control. You just play on site, watch Heaven, watch CT. You know that your spawn's covered of all things, and it makes it a very easy mode down to follow suit.
Yeah, and then I mean, Slaps doesn't even get the opportunity to push out of the dark cover. It's just a consistent barrage of bullets there into CT. And, I mean, that does mean that we get to see, you know, GCU get an opportunity to tie that half 6-6, but we'll see what they can pull out, considering Dino might be going for that judge buy. But on the other side of things, that was a nice rotation. I mean, like I said, Envy is clearing the way, so you know they have that deeper player that can cut off some of these rotations. They knew that A site was really heavy on Terps players, so it is just those calls and that leverage of widespread map control GCU needs to capitalize upon. Instead of, you know, gambling on these full fights like they're about to. But, you know, maybe I should just keep my mouth shut because they're winning out the duel this time.
I mean, it makes sense. I mean, well, we have powers as casters, but we just kind of forget about it sometimes. But, I mean, looking at Dino already starting things off, I mean, that raising a judge, that's a match made in heaven, realistically. I mean, even then when in Thrifty round, you're expecting your raise to step things up. You're expecting your raise to be able to fill those shoes, use those blast packs, and say, well, this is still less than a rifle, and so long as I find one, I can pick one up. So, already starting things off on the right foot here for GCU to make sure it's 6-6 half once more on the attacking side with the double duelist. You're expecting for them to have a lead by the end of this, but we haven't realistically seen a lead starting at a half yet. And this could be the point where Terps Esports, after losing their map pick during Icebox, they can bounce back even harder here in map number 2 and have themselves at least a 7-5 to play with, because after a 1-1 start, we know they can bounce back at least in terms of a pistol when they don't have the advantage in guns, but can they do it when they have, well, even bigger guns? That operator already sitting up towards a heaven, waiting for a player to swing right into it, hoping that even then, if you circumnavigate and go onto site, you're running into what could be a imaginary deadlock setup that's been there so many rounds now, but a little bit of a miscommunication. We see Astro going ahead, getting clicked off, Envy's holding on heaven, and just forcing Yaks back with the rest of the team able to get that plant off for nearly for free.
Yeah, a little down to the wire, but Spike gets planted nonetheless. They successfully overcome that operator that was supposed to be that surprise element to lock in a 7th, and we might have just speaking the 6-6 into existence unless this 2v4 can be won out by these remaining Terps Esports players. Judge holding a tight angle. It's getting baited out as well by, you know, Sipe, but for now, none of it aligns. Spartacus quite literally getting pushed around here in heaven. And yeah, that's the fight one. Top right position maintained and a tie here. 6-6. History repeating itself. Whew, I'm scared for this pistol.
I'm excited for it. I always love pistols because you never know what's going to happen there. So long as the numbers are at least even to some degree, even if they're not, if you get that tag somewhere, I mean, ghosts become those one-shot headshot monsters. I mean, if a player that has just the antsiness and has that kind of jitters, you have people that are literally just pistol players. They just feel good with that ghost. They understand the patterns of it, and they can just do anything, just insane things if they get the time of day. But speaking of pistol, it was Flaps who was starting at the top, and that was, sure, just the first round of that half. But ever since then, in those first 2 rounds, kind of fell off, quite frankly, on the defensive side of the map. And that's because, well, you're playing more back towards screens. You were hoping that the matchups would be just rushing into your setups a little more, so in that double duelist. But GCU having a lot more discipline and just making sure to play it a little more slow, a little more methodical, and not really just running willy-nilly into things where they know they're going to get crossed up unnecessarily. But with Terps Esports down the attacking side, we're going to see what this Deadlock can do on a post plant, but better yet, what their duelists can do in this situation, not being a Jet anymore, but being a Raze and still being in just that singular.
Yeah. Nice mid-take, complete disrespect of any potential presence from Terps Esports, unimpeded on this B-split attempt, but those backside players are still anchoring, and Sipe, you usually get those frags, which are only good for 1 disco around, maintaining a Terps Esports numbers advantage. Nice utility to deny the flood retake from GCU as well, forces the rotation, the reattempt out of heaven, where with these pistols that'll be interesting, as well as the backstab opportunity from Flaps, which finds its mark. So now that's a huge time distraction, and that net means that they know both are under their control, their domain, and under their 3K to keep Terps Esports grounded and ensure that they don't get that same 4-round, 5-round closeout like Icebox had.
Yeah, just keep things rolling. I mean, a great start here from Terps Esports in this secondary half. I mean, knowing that even then they bounced back and made the first half look even better for them. But on this attacking side, this is where they struggled on Icebox. And GCU, obviously, they most definitely didn't. Their post-plant prowess was just disgusting. And they didn't even have the duelists to really speed up the process then. So I want to see really what it looks like now. I mean, in this round specifically, we're not going to get to see the full potential of it. I don't think we're going to see an insane turnaround like Terps Esports fans would do during that first half. But I'm looking forward to see how much damage they can really do to make that third round just look more feasible.
I mean, so far, their own wall, a little bit of an impedance, but still going to hold off that Vents player so they can't pinch early on this B Heaven control. So similar pathing, similar outcome here, a flawless B site take, but timing could be the issue. No, Flaps gets the read, gets the repivot towards CT. No punish, no trade to come out as well from Envy's at the moment, but what does come out is a surprise element from B main here. Weapon collected but quickly stolen back. Flaps on the top of the world, stealing away these frags. Yes, Classic takes one down with it, but EX good for the trade. Now upgrading those weapons in kind. That's going to mean a 2-round lead here and a pretty hefty bonus, and they're even going to force into it potentially since they had 2 or 3 rifles already to work with.
I mean, you really can't blame them here. I mean, considering what happened in that last round, I mean, things were looking so hot for them anyways. I mean, just see if you can carry on that momentum. But I do think we're going to have a little bit of a pause here considering that Envy's does seem to be DC'd in the meantime. And that's one of your big shooters. I mean, especially here on this defense, that's going to be your Viper. If anybody else is gone, I mean, you have 2 duelists to work with, but you only have 1 controller here. That's going to be able to have a massive influence everywhere in terms of actually setting up a line of scrimmage that has to be respected. And, honestly, seeing GCU now being on the back burner here, trying to rebound and catch up. Only 2 rounds, and it's not that big of a deal. I mean, we've seen 2 rounds as the very start of a half, but this is the most influential round for them because otherwise we're going to see maybe more than likely a 9th and a 10th just starting to well up here for Terps Esports. And GCU, this is their one opportunity to really answer before they say, all right, now we're in that in-game situation. We're in that final countdown where the stress really starts to kind of push on. And I'm sure GCU obviously coming in here as the lower seed inside of this bracket. I mean, every team qualifies for this to every single exact degree, quite frankly. The seeding is just there in terms of map differentials. But, I mean, starting things off hot. 1-0, you want to make sure to close this thing out. You said it earlier, to where this map, quite frankly, it either goes the distance or whoever wins this, I think it's just winning ascent right out to just make sure it's a 3-0 and close up shot quickly.
Yeah, Ascent, bread and butter of Valorant, split not far behind in terms of how long it's been in the pool. But for now, a stark change of pace from Terps Esports. We saw the first 2 rounds, that dynamic explosion through male, through B. They were anticipating some sort of adjustment maybe from Grand Canyon that has only come in the form of the Rays being on that B site towards the bottom of ropes instead, to try and maybe cut off that attempt as they jump over. And now, in the meantime, it's going to be a B fake potentially, since Spike's leaning towards lobby on the B site A. Nice initiator utility, and that's enough to trick GCU. We talked about it before that a duelist present wasn't enough on Icebox to draw numbers, but clearly the Sky utility was.
Yeah, I mean, seeing really what's happening here, I mean, already getting underway onto the site, looking for a little bit of pressure here from GCU. I mean, this is the point where you've got to make sure to hold your ground, and quite frankly, Sight starting off doing a very good job of that, and Envy's being a guardian angel for the other one that is underneath heaven. With GCU, we asked them to step up for a round. Good God, did they do it in flying colors, finding themselves a flawless, inking them a 7 to work with. When we ask for something, well, quite frankly, if somebody can provide, it's going to be them. Once more, here inside this game, only 1 round delta, and because of that force that you mentioned in that last round, if anything, have an advantage coming to this one with a player sitting on now a Stinger. The rest of them able to at least perch up to some degree, but, I mean, you want everybody on board.
I mean, that round started with a missed call, a missed rotation over to A, but the quick adjustment, the flood back into B, all beautifully executed to keep it in a flawless round fashion. So they've won out that key rifle round, that 3rd round, to make things more standard, more in contention. And now Envy's again being the one pushed into capitalizing, narrowly bobbing and weaving away from the annihilation from the paint shell, so they keep their life, but in tow, in mirror, when you have that much presence, that much attention towards B, something is going to lapse over on A. And that's been this Viper Eugene lurking all the way into CT.
Hello. Bit of a wake-up call. There's Eugene. Lurking through into the back of the map. But guess what? Nader's got Spike. So you can be wherever you really want to be, but so long as that player was there, you had enough of a chance. But now he's not. Giving up that space, unfortunately, losing out that fight, getting a little bit antsy after seeing what's going on there. It's Eugene, and it may only be Eugene this round, quite frankly. Had the chance to close things out there at least with 1 more, but the round goes on, and it's Sight in a 1v2 situation, not expecting Flaps to be up in A heaven. Actually expecting the player with the crosshair placement there, but just not taking the shot when necessary. In a 7-9 manner, GCU, after a flawless round and an outstanding start of round number 17, they just don't really close it out.
So for now, when it gets to rifles, that's when you're truly tested. And we're actually going to see Nader with the operator this go round to solo stronghold that A site. Remaining members are going to pressure B heavily to try and hurdle these members of Terps Esports back towards that operator, back towards that A site where they think they have a defensive advantage. But, I mean, if you just win the fights outright, does it really matter? A 1-for-1 trade. Still 2 members to combat in B main. That's going to be taking control of. So now, I mean, the round's been thrown to chaos. Your initial plan falling short. Regrowth for any damage you did do on the Terps Esports player essentially erases that progress. So what do you do? Now you're in a 3v4. Now your operator is trying to find any individual to reposition against, and there's nobody, not even a lurker player towards A.
Yeah, I mean, in a situation like this, I mean, GCU, they obviously have to hold their ground. They don't want to overextend. They're waiting for some kind of a call to be made, not only for themselves, but in terms of the audibles, to let them know where this emphasis is going to be taking place with the X's and all these fights just occurring so close upwards into that B main area of the map. You don't want to really take a risk here, but you do know that more than likely they're just going to be stalling out and playing for that half of the map. So that's why Sipe is just sitting on site, ready to roll whenever need be, and even Envy's there to work with it as well. But I don't know if they're really going to get the time of day. I mean, with 30 seconds remaining, you're just waiting on Flaps to make a play here, and you get all the space in the world to get it done. But still, that's unreal.
Oh my goodness, the team flash that just ended the round. They're going to be seeing that flash in their nightmares. Unfortunate for
They're not going to be seeing anything.
Spartacus.
They're flash.
You're true. But that completely dismantled. Like you said, Flash in the position to make a move, to pin down these players like Sipe, like Envy's that have been insane in those high stress situations when there are 2 to 3 players hurtling at them. And I don't want to say that was an important round, but now you're looking at Eco and a potential tied game at 9-9 favoring Grand Canyon.
I mean, they lost their chance earlier off the back of a flawless and couldn't really rebound and follow up with the one afterwards. So now with a miracle granted, or better yet, a mistake just forfeited on the side of Terps Esports, this is their chance once again to step up and get the job done. With their actual weapon advantage at their hands, a very definitive one, I'd say, considering that we're seeing full sheriff buys on the side of Terps Esports. You got a shot here, and even then already 2 players close out as well. You just can't really fall short. You can't go crazy here. You can't push up too far. Work into the distance, and you can see that everybody's trying to do that. But sometimes the stinger will get the better of you. So what do? Watch the ankle and just make sure they don't pick that thing up.
So GCU's opened the roundup, has gotten that advantage. Flaps, though, in a position again to try and deliver. Can't tell if the sky is AFK, but that human alarm bot would act as an indication that this is an AI exec. It'll also be a weapon collected here. But for now, that's just an unfortunate way to lose that Phantom. Sonic Sensor forward again, talking about how this proactive Sentinel utility can function, but when you have a Jet on the other side of things, it can be disrespected. The operator, the 3v3, yes, there's a pit up, but for the players not in the pit, that means that's an easy frag for the Blades to come out.
One enemy remaining.
And a 2v2.
Oh my god! How much power do we have in the series? We cast or curse them all, or is it just actually mistakes on mistakes?
That's called an AFK from Volt accidentally. It gave the weapon Flaps needed to go huge to get that 4K that round, which sometimes that's how the cookie crumbles, Mick.
But even then, you know, Flaps is up in heaven, and I mean, after that trade, you're like, okay, we're in a 2v1, we can push the site, just play for the Viper's Pit there, and then we just go for the stick and force Flaps to come to us as a Sentinel. But it's just like at that point now where Terps Esports, they gave you a chance. They gave GCU such a luxury there, and they immediately compensated for it. And if GCU can't capitalize on massive moments like that to get free rounds, I just don't know if they're really made to win this map.
Well, again, we're kind of positioned for an all-out mid duel, but Terps Esports a little less than eager to, fight into a potential trap there. So, look elsewhere, maybe towards B main, where Sipes once again in a high-ticket position, but the counter strafe's the better weapon, all from Eugene. Rob them of that potential frag. I'm surprised there isn't a hard execute off of that initial win towards B. They're still defaulting. They're still looking for these eco frags, and they've found them. Spartacus cuts off Nader in their own spawn. So that's going to be the call to rotate back towards A. My question is, will these Vents players meet them toe for toe? I mean, Envies has already gotten the frag onto Eugene. Astro looked AFK as well, returning the favor. So that's going to be some weapons to potentially collect for the retake. But who knows? I mean, Showstopper's in. Dino only has a judge, so they can't fight in solo. They have to wait for Envies to come back and fight with them.
That's the second time we just see a player just not shoot back. Not be there at all, quite frankly. I'm not sure what's going on the servers. It's pretty funny, all things considered. But I mean, still, with the time of day now, and with Dino able to pick up a gun, we can see the chance for somebody to go big just as much as Flaps did during that first round. Able to go ahead and just find that 4K. It's not going to be as big of a 4K, considering the amount of kills that are available aren't going to surmount to be that number. But, well, Yex, the showstopper in hand, is again just a game of denial. Just playing that blast pack, trying to go ahead and separate yourself one at a time to take those fights, but it's not even necessary with Envies. Shutting things down, finding a third, getting ultimate for the next one, but better yet, winning this one.
You said that GCU is struggling to take advantage of the opportunities Terps Esports is throwing their way, but that is a surefire round where they literally took Astro's offer of an AFK weapon and converted it into a round. And I like what you mentioned about that satchel coming out from Diner just to divide the players so that Showstopper couldn't clutch out the round by finding both of the targets. But regardless, might be looking at some sort of pause to discuss what's been happening with these DCs, these AFKs coming into pivotal rounds, I should say. I mean, I think that's 2 thrifties that have come out of people disconnecting. And so double digits for Terps Esports, 10-9 right now here. And I mean, if you think about it, like, yes, you could roll back the rounds to see if they would have changed, but a 30 for a thrifty, I mean, 10-9, I mean, you each got one. Just keep going.
I mean, but it's a string of rounds that has to culminate from it, right? I mean, we're seeing these back and forths. We've noticed this already, but even then it comes down to the secondary half where we've gotten a much closer half already, all things considered, comparative to what we saw in Icebox. That was a 13-8. We're now looking at a 10-8, 10-9 now, where we're getting those trades, we're getting those games, we're getting these rounds to really just trade for each other later on. But I think it really comes down to, obviously, when it comes to DCs, that can't be helped. But you kind of have to be ready to rumble whatever, because it's not even just rounds where we see a player going on a tangent. But it's the fact that a gun is picked up and you have so many other players that have guns that can just play for trades at that point. Flaps, for example, being that one player. At that stage, I mean, you have a player with the knives, and that's kind of unlucky. An operator there is your real gun. But if you at least get that trade there, the Viper's Pit, it's going to be a little stressful, but at least you're playing for exit frags at that point if you really opt not to go in there. You can just sit out on the edge, wait for maybe another gun to be dropped, and then you make that next round feasible, because we've seen so many Thrifties come out off a singular gun. Where is all the other guns that are inside that lobby?
Well, speaking of where all the guns are, we don't even know where all the players are. It's DC after DC now that the game
Right.
has been paused. So we'll be waiting on a resolution to some of these server issues, but it's the last day of the act, right? Of course this
Yeah.
stuff's bound to happen. Everybody's trying to grind out the RR. So maybe it's a little bit overwhelmed, but now everybody's back into the lobby. We're back into the
we go.
action and back into the frags. GCU takes the first blood. They're trying to shut down this A attempt on an eco round for Turf Esports, but Nice Place Paranoia means that it's going to be a 1-for-1 trade here, but the A site not giving up just yet. Flaps alive, fighting, but that's going to be the last one to stand. Annihilation Online, though, so very similar to how the Showstopper can function to make things even. You can see if Flaps isolate one, easy annihilation. You have to draw out your teammate or they're gonna die. Oh, perfect timing, though.
Get the player out or you mess around. No, you got to take those shots. I mean, it got out, not the biggest deal. Like I said, if you're going to be going down to these rounds, at least take as much as you can with you. And that was a testament to what I said there. When I talked about the spike going off and maybe dropping a gun, and ultimate and annihilation, you'll do that in the post round too, because that thing is tanky. But regardless, I mean, Flaps, I'm loving to see that. Flaps is really starting to light up here on the attacking side of the map, which is just insane to me. This is the second round where we've seen at least a 3K come up for this guy on this half alone, and just now kind of even then, one actually clutching up and winning it, but the second one making it look so darn doable. But this is now a situation here where GCU, they do have an upper hand to some degree. They've now actually stabilized. They've won themselves around. They have guns to go for the next, but this is a point where they can actually definitively, I would say, not win this map, but find themselves in another situation where finally you put Terps Esports in an eco, and you can actually just outright win it.
Yeah, that would be a map point secure, but we can see Terps Esports not going down with the fight, taking the proactive in this post-plant scenario, fighting into Rams, fighting into the retake attempt, and Yex and Flaps are in the same wavelength here. Now they've added an additional player to the fray. No challenge through the toxic screen other than on the nader with the operator, and with a 1v4 on the line, yeah, they just take what they can, take what's given to them, and get out of dodge. Save that operator, save for the next round fight, because this map could go all the way.
Yeah, just leave Nader alive, look for any kind of just impact and going to carry on to the next. But the issue is, with a little bit of time left on the clock, there is still some time to hunt, but with only 7 seconds remaining, you know, you're probably good. You're just looking back towards CT. It's going to be way too long of a route to lap you around anywhere else. And, well, here you go. Next round, you got it to work with. But issue is, not everybody else does. Buys look a little bit iffy. Timeout called in the meantime because of it. And considering that we are seeing a timeout come through, I'm sure it's not for a DC. I'm sure even then, surprisingly enough, they could have taken those DCs as a little bit of a timeout. But they opted to at least kind of figure out what happened there because, well, with a little bit of a rebound, everybody being back in the server, you need to get acclimated and take a little bit of a breather to figure out what exactly the next move may be.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, we're getting into those last make or break rounds. Yes, they escaped that potential thrifty demise into a map point that you spoke of favoring GCU, but it's going to be, like you said, this timeout to bounce right back, to put things right back into contention, tie things up, you know, right before a potential overtime. So you're maybe even talking about what to do if this does go to overtime. Yes, you get
Right.
a timeout during that, but it's kind of an all-in-one for how to get over the finish line at this point.
It's a big stressor when it's there because the nerves are really welling up that you would much rather feel prepared for it than be working on the back end. Because if you're calling a timeout, you're not calling it more times than not when you're ahead. You're calling it when you're around behind. So you would much rather obviously set up for that first round preemptively, make sure you have the lead, and then force the opponent to do that same exact thing where you're playing already a leg forward. But consider that the only leg forward right now is we Terps Esports with a round differential of 1. Once again, playing in their favor. We're seeing GCU and Terps make these really good exchanges. This is a point of the game now where you see the buys, and even though they have an advantage, the buys aren't there, and it's going to eventually result where this whole thrifty thing we're getting here is going to end eventually. It's not going to happen over and over and over. There's going to be eventually a pattern break, and we're at the stage of the game where when the pattern breaks, the game is quite frankly going to be over.
The question is who will break that pattern first. For now, again, in a high potential situation, Flaps on the lurk through mid while the real attempt is going towards A. We saw some of the changes they made was a proactive post plant after the plant had been secured. But for now, it's just take space and hold. They had not seen a single player for GCU, and this seems like a little bit of a red flag for them. Trailblazer destroyed is some ounce of information, but Volt isn't even aware that there could be a Vents player to complicate the situation. So I'm concerned with Terps Esports potentially overcooking off this lack of information, but GCU also has to win out these duels to hold on to this A-site control.
I think, slow and steady is a good approach here for Terps Esports. A little bit different, but, how far can they really inch themselves up? It comes down to what players really find themselves in an impactful spot. And Flaps has been really an MVP so far, but it's Volt here now, just able to hold down every single last angle. Any player swinging out, and GCU, it's not even really just them holding out sight. It's just them finding the necessary kills at the last second because Terps Esports gave them so much free time.
No, for real. I said they were going to overcook, and they just left the meal in the oven. They never even took an opportunity to go and attack into the site until it was too late. I think just somebody looked at the timer and was like, oh, wait a minute, there's 15 seconds left. We got to make a move, and that's when, yeah, those key players, defensive players, Sipe, Nader with the up, and even Volt with some of that utility just to deny any cohesive attempt. Tie things up 11-11 out of that timeout. Once again, make things a little bit of a shake up.
Well, keeping things tied, keeping things rolling. It really comes down to what is remaining. And with the Annihilation already not only just being popped, but being missed better yet, you're now looking at GCU. They're the ones with the ultimate to play with. They're the ones already a leg up in terms of kills as well. And they are seeming to continue that trend. One by one, we see Terps Esports players just fall one after the other with an absolute utter domino effect. Nader not able to hit a single one of these shots. Come on, brother, I know you're better than this. We've seen you hit more insane shots.
Ouch.
And finally here to compensate at least a little bit. Throwing the showstopper down, it's not even him, it's Flaps able to go ahead and find that final kill. But Eugene, in a situation where you understand that the rest of your teammates are not in the best set of shoes, you can at least squeak that spike out and get yourself an extra couple of creds because these buys are going to be very, very important next with GCU sitting in a map point.
Yeah, Eugene. You have a Deagle, maybe try and get a weapon in hand, but at this point, they're just trying to hunt you down. The retake, a 1v4. Nice Deagle shot served up, but it's going to be the friendship swing of the last 3 remaining members to stem the bleed and to get that map point. Again, GCU, when they tie things up, they are able to pivot into reclaiming a lead, and it comes at that make or break point when map, end is on the horizon. And this will be the second map under their belt as well in the best of 5, so a huge advantage. The last life for Terps Esports going into a stun if they can lock in this final round.
Yeah, just going ahead, getting things on a roll. GCU just playing from what seemed like a leg behind just this entire map. Not out of arm's reach, though. So, in a good spot to really just rebound and win this game when it matters most. And they put themselves into a spot of success where they can pull off just that. Already managing to get the money to kind of tie things up. get all the full buys, utility, the armor there to back it up as well. We did see a singular player working with a Guardian on the side of Terps Esports, and while that gun sure isn't any laughing matter, it really excels in something like Breeze or Lotus where you have a little more range. This map is very close quarters where, quite frankly, I mean, you see a lot more players that we've already seen, more times than not, giving the Rays a judge and then trying to take a legitimately automatic gun for themselves, which is something I would probably opt for when you're considering this buy because of how important this round is really going to be. And, I mean, Terps Esports, it's not a matter of really just playing the game. They've been doing such a great job finding these kills, but can you keep your catalyst alive? Can you keep that player, which obviously so far is going to be Flaps, on that deadlock? Has just been utterly disgusting. I think if you keep them alive, a chance of a round is never going to be gone.
At this point, yeah, just the pressure building. Both members now exhausting those timeouts where we head into possibly the last round of split. And GCU, they're getting active. They take that first blood into a beautiful flash peak combination with that operator. The kind of a shot they were looking for to potentially be that final nail in the coffin. Envy is in the hot seat to hold on. Paranoia invested, but they still find two.
Oh my
God! That decay from the poison cloud. They single-handedly want to send us into ascent. Out of bullets, no problem. Swap weapons. Spartacus in the 1v5. Spike not in their possession. Has to navigate so many of these Grand Canyon players in so many positions. Envy's is feeling it. No overheat when you have a regrowth in your back pocket alongside the swing. And that is a flawless way to shut out the momentum the timeout would have guaranteed. 13-11, and it is gonna be GCU up 2-0 so far in the series.
Absolute masterclass here from GCU, constantly playing from just one step behind, and I mean, when it mattered the most, able to go ahead and kind of come out on top. And it was at the point where we've seen to where they have pulled off absolute miracles just to get that point in a game of catch-up. And I think if they can pull that off, I was always asking myself the question mentally, when are they going to do this in a round where it matters? I mean, obviously it already matters to catch up, but when are they going to do it to pull themselves into a lead? And inevitably and eventually they did manage to do that at the very end. Obviously a couple DCs here and there. I think it would have been pulled off earlier with that first Thrifty round or after that kind of team flash we saw come through. But I mean, obviously that team made up for it. The other side exchanged that exact same blow. So it awkwardly enough evened itself out. But I think GCU actually forcing that problem and getting themselves into a case and having a player just clutch it up more so. I would say that was more of a clutch than a Thrifty because that was a 4K realistically, rather than the entire team kind of coming together and really making that game plan happen. Meanwhile, GCU is a much more collaborative effort, and you could see that in every aspect of the game. The way they were taking those fights, the way they were starting things off. I mean, the way they were just really, really forcing the problem into Terp's hands. And I got to say, it's a little unfortunate to see because obviously I would like to see a deadlock win rate go up for this map. I have no bias towards her, but I think genuinely when you look at Flaps, the player alone warrants the pick. I mean, the guy's just trying to trap people because he knows he can hit the shots. Just make sure they can't run if they want to.
And I mean, I want to praise UMD because they definitely were serving what we asked for in terms of the players that needed to step up between Icebox and Split. Yex, putting up the numbers, being that entry player alongside Flaps, who was, at their side on a lot of these plays, a lot of the defense, especially when they were looking at that double team up on the A site. But it really was just, again, the defensive lockdown of players like Envy's, like Sipe, that were just unrivaled here when they finally got onto the attack, when they had to get those key rounds that we spoke of underway. Yes, there were hero plays here and there. Why Flaps is almost dropping a 30 bomb on this map, but it takes more than that to get wins against Grand Canyon University, or at least it is evident so far in this best of 5 from the Champions Nationals Grand Finals. So Mick, we already saw some of the changes we needed to see from Icebox to Split. We're headed to Ascent next. Do number one, are we going to see a mirror comp? And if we do, then what changes further do Terps Esports have to make to get that route, since that's their last chance here?
I think, quite frankly, I mean, one thing that we spoke into existence, I think, was that deadlock pick, and as good as it looked for Flaps, I'm going to go ahead and make an early call. Clove.
Ooh.
We're gonna see Clove on a set because it's such a comfy map. Why wouldn't you pick a Clove? It's not that different. You can really run anything here, and if you want to make something different, make something unique, then just Just go for it. Who knows, though? We got to make sure these players get their internet under wraps and make sure all these servers and stuff are getting together. So we're going to give it a little more time for a break, possibly. But no matter what, we're going to be back with the mat number 3. We'll see you then. Welcome back. Things ready to run, rock, and roll here for map number 3. Getting things underway. GCU up 2-0. Not even the top seed in this matchup, but it's the Champions Division. It's the Grand Finals of Nationals, so can you really blame them? Everybody's A game is coming out here tonight, and everybody's ready to roll and rumble, but is GCU ready to close things out in a 3-0 fashion to make it a quick night for themselves? That's the real question. I think we're going to wait for the answer for here is Ascent is the one that we're heading into next.
It's a great question, I mean, we've looked at the journey we've come through so far, both, their own map being taken and Terps, esports losing their pick of Icebox. So we're headed back to, the ball being in Terps esports court, both in terms of it being their map pick, but also their opportunity to deny the 3-0 clothesline. That would be an early departure out of the grand finals for the Champions and Nationals grand finals. But we said bind on the horizon, a weak spot for GCU. They've only played it once, they've lost it once, versus we have not seen Terps Esports on it, at least during the Nationals playoffs. For Ascent, it's a strong suit for both of these squads. My only kind of, I guess, notion to bring up is that it's 2-0 for Terps, 1-0 for GCU, but one of those wins was with a substitute player, so we've had some shifts in terms of the roles that the Terps are used to playing. So once they settle back into this standard squad, I'm definitely curious to see, if they decide to make any changes like you pointed out, because right now, according to my history, we might just have the stock standard. Mick, sorry to break it to you.
Which, even, I think, quite frankly, this is a map that everybody knows, everybody plays. So substitutes, I don't really think make the biggest deal in the world, just beside maybe some role differentials and swapping things out where you have the players that are in primary slots kind of flexing out to accommodate for a new guy coming into the shoes and making them feel the most comfortable as they possibly can. But, Ascent has been a map that has been just repeated so many times that I feel like anybody can nearly play anything here. It just comes down really to what we saw in the likes of Icebox, some mid-round calling, just understanding the adjustments, getting ready to see what kind of, different plays or different adaptations are made by the defensive end, and just knowing how to really topple on top of that. And I don't think, quite frankly, that we're going to be seeing GCU starting on the back end of this one. I think we've seen them kind of come back with a vengeance in a lot of these maps and kind of keep themselves alive. We've seen a 6-6 for the both halves.
Yeah.
But it's always been a little bit of a rebound. It's always been one team finding themselves a really good start, and then one team catching up and, quite frankly, finding the lead and it irons out. I think this map is where we finally break that mold, if anything, because it's something that everybody knows. And honestly, when you see a difference or when you see something start off with such adamant control, I think it's going to be a lot easier to shut down, a lot faster to read.
Yeah, and there it is, the stock standard mirror meta composition for both
Yippee.
of these squads. And you mentioned it was one team that was taking these early leads, and surprisingly, that was Terps Esports, right? The one
Right.
who is now down 0-2 in this series. So what I need to see from them is to adapt the same way Grand Canyon has, right? Because, Terps finds themselves in those holes in the late halves when it does stare down that 6-6 scoreline, versus GCU consistently adapts and changes. So I will say on a map like Ascent, where everyone's playbook is basically out in the open, it might be a little bit easier to hopefully get those reads or get those adaptations underway, but only time will tell. Because also, sometimes like Split, a lot of those rounds for Terps Esports came out of, them not knowing how to navigate the deadlock or some of these creative plays that Flaps was bringing into the equation. So without that surprise element, maybe they're going to struggle even more.
Yeah, I think honestly, just knowing this tried and true kind of setup being on both sides, even then I've seen a bit of adjustment. Yesterday, I had the pleasure of seeing a team replace the Sova for a Viper. And sometimes we do see that flex being brought out. We see the teams wanting to kind of go ahead and put a leash on that Jet, because that's the biggest primary focus, is making sure either to cut off some of these operator side of a line of sights, or even then kind of making sure these aggressive pushes that come through onto a site, you see no armor on the back of it, so it makes those kills that much easier to successfully find. But I think honestly with the operator picks usually being brought out by these, specifically Yex, that is quite frankly also the first player to get shut down in the process. So GCU with a very, very successful push, putting right at the middle of the map, coming out towards market, flooding this B side, closing the door behind him and just saying, we'll lock these guys off somewhere else. Win or lose the fight, we got enough denial, we got enough time to get things done. And even then, they don't have do they have a spike plant? I didn't see it. It doesn't go off at the top. Or
I
there
don't
at
think
the
they
end, so.
did. But
Which is a little awkward. That's some of the creds that they're missing out on, though.
I mean, without this creds, they're still buying up. I mean,
Right.
two rifles, two Vandals in particular, and those players that did have the heavy investments right at the gate, like those Deagles, are going to be carrying them over. What I'm looking at with Dino, and specifically their heavier fraggage, that round is an early bleed storm potentially in that 3rd or 4th round that could come to fruition. Now, I want to take you back to Split, though, because that 2nd round, what did we see? A thrifty come out from Terps Esports Lotus, even though that pistol was won by GCU. So again, this Marshall buy, something to be reckoned with from NECC. We've seen them with the AWP. It's just a little bit smaller of a sniper rifle, but unfortunately this time that spawn elevated position, a perfect bait for that A-main aggression, and that's a first blood for GCU, traded out by a Marshall.
As soon as you get the hit off, I mean, understandably so, if you're playing KO, do get out of dodge. There's no heals available for you, and quite frankly, anything's going to knock you off there. But still, Astro extending out towards the middle. Nader winning that fight, and Eugene there for a very quick exchange, but still, that's fights going off in the middle of the map that don't really matter in the big scheme of things. This entire game revolves around a spike, and that went over towards the A side of the map to go ahead and force a bit of a post plant and a retake here from Terps Esports. And, well, where is it going to be coming from? At every single bit of A heaven. There's nobody really lapping around yet towards that door. They're obviously waiting for all 3 members to show up and be here to kind of swing at one instantaneous moment. But, I mean, still, with the automatic guns that are there, it doesn't really matter all that much because the Sheriffs are able to go ahead and hit the 1-taps. It's the Spectres, they got to hit multiple, and that spray just will not line up. And it'll give Terps Esports their first round to match right afterwards.
I mean, I laid it out, and Terps Esports delivered. Mainly the Sova violence there, 3K for 3K, and again, it's Flaps coming out on top for Terps Esports. It's interesting, because usually that 3-person funnel out of the dark cover heaven goes the way like 9 out of 10 times in the favor of the players with the weapons, but unfortunately there was no one. They were all so close that it was the angle that was inoptimal for them. Just the little heads of those Terps Esports players popping out, and they could not find those shorter range weapons like the Spectres. So again, it major disrupts the normal flow of the economy, the normal flow of rounds. And interestingly enough, Terps Esports is the one actually trying to aggress a little bit more here. 3 stack towards A main. That does mean that the 0 point doesn't have any information, so they might be funneling into this stack with this A split attempt.
I mean, Terps Esports, they've always had themselves a really good defense, and they like to, even then, just noting from Icebox, they love pushing up early, finding themselves some kills, and dwindling out those numbers as soon as the clock hits 0, the pre-round. But everything afterwards is where things get a little bit more awkward, but they've usually probably sniffed out 1 or 2 players by then, or it's not much of a concern. And GCU, it takes them a couple rounds to get acclimated to that. Even if they understand the pacing, they don't understand the actual spots where the actual areas of execution happen on a round-to-round basis. And they need a little bit of moments and a couple rounds to understand and really just kind of take attendance realistically. So when they figure that out, though, the game really turns on its head. But this is a map where I think NECC could, that scoping player, where we see over and over again, that operator coming into play, this is the map where honestly we see Jets always start to really feel themselves, really start to go ham on that gun. And because they just know this map and they know the angles more than anything else, I mean, they've practiced these angles 3 trillion times, it feels like. And if NECC ever gets that money, I'm surprised they don't see it around like this, but after winning the last one, you probably have money carrying over, so you're just not even thinking about that.
True. So for now, we can see the slow down just a bit here, with the full first rifle round coming out. And pause, I believe. Oh, just some pings. I mean, we're just breathing. Everyone needs a breather, you know. It's a best of 5. We're waiting for. I'm trying to figure out who it is that we're waiting on. Looks like the Killjoy's getting back into the swing of things here. Nader teaming up with the rest of the members here to try and potentially go towards this mid attempt. Yeah, there we go. There we go.
We gave them a little bit more of a break just to figure out, you know, talk to their facility managers, figure out what's going on with the routers. He thought that would have been enough. You would think.
You'd think.
Regardless, though, it's a scent. We don't need timeouts, rounds after in this kind of situation. I think it goes right to the point where, I mean, You know where you're pushing. You already know what you're hitting. And you even think you know exactly how you're going to do it, too. But do you know how the round's going to pan out? GCU knows they want to go over towards this B side. But do they know that Eugene's going to be there waiting inside market and ready to make a reckoning of 2 of the players on the side of Terps? Well, I don't think they really expected that. They do find themselves in real estate, though. They get the spike down, and they're in a 2v4 situation. They do have a post plant to play with. But will they hit the shots? And, I mean, even then, some aggression coming out from Volt. A couple shots taken in the meantime. I mean, do you win these out? Sight finds a pretty good start at it, but the flash is going to be coming out, and I don't know if they're going to be ready for it. A beautiful tailwind off the back of it. Spartak is able to manage one, and you're in a 3v1 situation where you know where this guy is. He's suffocated towards the back. Just get a player to run over to that spike and take care of it and just clean up shop.
Yeah, that really hinged on, you know, both players for GCU staying alive. Sipe alongside Volt, and once one falls from the fancy footwork of a tailwind towards switch into that cloud burst, there's not much more that you can do if you are GCU. So first rifle round won out by Terps Esports, but again, we've said this before, I believe it was 5-1 on split when there was a streak of rounds that Grand Canyon University tied together to come back and tie things up 6-6. So it's going to be, you know, that pinnacle of rounds that I'm going to be looking towards. Now, this round in particular, again, Operator online a little bit early for Terps Esports. This time it's in a prime position to deal some damage, and that's exactly what it's going to do. Finds the first blood, notably the duelist here for GCU as well, and that causes a little bit of a halt to this B exec.
I mean, it's all coming right out from main, too. I mean, it's a big funnel, almost could be fish in a barrel considering how this push may work, or better yet, in what order do they die? Is it going to be 1 by 1, or is it going to be a full force where they can find themselves a collateral? But with the X missing that initial shot and even the one afterwards following, you get yourself a plant down possibly. You're just looking to juke things out. You're looking to stay alive, make sure not to die, and well, you manage to keep everybody alive. GCU find themselves some good picks too, able to get that spike down now, but in a 3v4 situation, it looks feasible, but to what extent? How scary is this going to be? A Hunter's Fury coming out on the attacking side as well from Volt inside that boathouse, hoping to create a little bit of denial and create some space for everybody else, but it could have been, quite frankly, Nader to win out that entire round. But Volt with nothing but a Spectre in hand. I mean, you're in a 1v3 situation. The rest of your team is where the rifles were going to, so you can't do much by yourself, and you can't do much to really hold out to find yourself a second. Instead, Terps going up to 4. This is, obviously, as you mentioned, not that big of a deal because we've seen bigger strings of rounds already. We've seen bigger deltas over the course of the series, but GCU always have a tendency to really just wake up before that 6th round. So if we're going to break that mold here today, or at least if GCU want to keep it going by any chance, they only got 2 more rounds to get it going. And one of these rounds is going to be spit on Nico.
But then again, I mean, a timeout can change mentality. We've seen it before in NECC and widespread Valorant. So they do get to that point being down 5 or 6. That's when I expect it to come out. Alongside that, though, I've got to praise Terp Esports. Their retakes have looked so insanely well coordinated. I mean, you know, from logs, plays, and, you know, main misdirections all getting cleared out fluidly. It's rough. I mean, even now, first blood again drawn by Eugene, a KJ that shouldn't even be playing that far forward on a defense on Ascent. So what I need to see is, number one, a plant, which they've been able to get done, and they need to play more proactively on that defense, pressuring CT, pressuring market. But I mean, like you mentioned, Mick, we're on an eco round. Frags already falling, no prospects of a site take in sight. So at this point, you're just ensuring that the economy can't run away for Terps Esports. But nice shot from Eugene. Continues that forward train chugging along.
Just ready really for any kind of matchup, and even if the shot isn't made like that point, I mean, it's those situations like Sipe right there. If you don't hit that shot, I don't know if you're quite going to get another one to hit realistically in these kinds of rounds. But a Blade Storm coming out from Dino too. I mean, this guy has been lighting it up in the server so far, so already making some equilibrium, making some strides here in the server, and making sure these numbers aren't looking nearly as big of a differential as what we were looking at prior. Sight, though, you got to have that gun out. You got to be ready. You know the man was there, and, well, take the shot, find the kill, and you get the gun. This is now an advantage here from GCU. We talked about you had 2 rounds to get it done. I think they're going to do just that.
15 seconds left. It has to
play.
get back to this
They know.
site
10 seconds
to
left.
play alongside their teammates. No information about where the KO is going to be coming from, but they're just going to hopefully play this together here in Boathouse. I mean, yeah, a Bucky, they're going to go from long range with the blades to short range really fast that Spartacus may not be anticipating. My hope here is that neither member of GCU gets antsy, that neither tries to be the hero here, because that's how you lose 1v2s. So I love this. The paranoia at the ready as soon as they jump down off of that ledge, but they're actually the one to take the first swing. Flashpoint out, tap on the spike. The blades will whiff, but that's when the Bucky follow-up comes through to deliver that thrifty on a silver ladder. 4-2, like we said, GCU does not go down without a fight.
And even then, they always manage to win themselves a thrifty in every single one of these games. So, I mean, if there was a point to do it, it would be at that point where you create a little bit of a lockout, don't allow Terps Esports to hit themselves to a round number 6, and maybe switch gears and get yourself on the leg up for once. But it's not going to be that big of a difference, not that big of a deal for Terps Esports, at least, considering that they still got a lot of money to work with, and obviously one of those big wallets investing in an operator here early on. Yes, we knew it was going to come out. We knew it was going to happen over and over again. I mean, it could have been expected from a mile away, and even you more than likely also know what angles of the map is going to be coming from.
Ooh,
there
nasty,
it
though.
is. Side. Already having a counter. Ready to win that game of rock, paper, scissors, and hitting the shots necessary to make sure it's done.
You said knowing what angle they're coming from. They definitely know they were coming from that angle. So first blood opened up. Astro trying to hold on tooth and nail to this A-main control, but their teammate falls. Paranoia fails. They're low HP. They have to fall back and keep what few numbers they still have in that stronghold. Nice frag through the dark cover. Will hold on. The Stratostep as well has not been spotted out by the Owl drones. That gives a glimmer of hope here. Flaps again going huge. Makes this winnable with the KJ 1v1. Both lockdowns in play. Eugene, though, in a really deep position. And they are going to use that to win out the round. It keeps Terps Esports on that front-running 5th round. They did it without ults, so this round's going to be a chaotic, Mick.
I mean, it most definitely is, considering that even then, I mean, over and over, we're noticing that GCU, they get themselves, even in a situation where the round doesn't look winnable, winnable or not winnable, they make it close. Either it's an absolute utter stomp, or it is just them looking outstanding and making sure the round really gets down to the wire. They have a particular talent in managing that. But Terps Esports, I think their raw individual talent, I think their pull is a little bit more focal. I mean, when Flaps is alive, as I mentioned on that last map, the round is always doable. And Flaps is going to be on that B side to where, quite frankly, I think you just run that guy over, make sure that he's out of it early on, and then anybody else playing for a retake, you don't have information necessarily, because it's going to be this over this dead, but also it's the top fragger from Terps that's going to be out for the count. Spartacus going ahead, opening things up really well. Astro in a really weird spot here. And even then, TPing, calling his pants down, still manages to win that.
I am just flabbergasted because Astro made a footstep, number one, before the shot is stepped. So
Exactly.
Bolt should have known to clear that corner. But now that they haven't, this A site exec is falling to pieces. Nader left in the 1v5. They expect the KJ here towards A main. No spike in hand, just looking for some frags before they follow through on that objective. But recognizing that there were 3 on A, thinks better, decides to duel into hopefully the minority of players. And Eugene has been hitting some insane single bullet shots this map, and that close out to the round, no exception. So flawless round triggers that timeout, like I said, would be coming if Terps Esports hit that 6-round milestone before GCU did. So we're gonna get a chance to see them win these next 4 rounds outright to maintain that 6-6 half we've seen map 1, map 2, and they're gonna fight for round 3.
I mean, no matter what, we're going to see something crazy regardless, no matter what. I mean, knowing that, as you mentioned, either a string of 4 rounds back-to-back by GCU, just saying we're not going down without absolutely tearing you a new one, or we're going to see finally the mold being broke, and Terps Esports understanding that, well, we're the number 1 seed coming in this for a reason, and the higher seed team, predictably so, should be ready for Ascent more than anybody else, because you know darn well that map is showing up in every single series. So, I mean, you better be ready for it. And I think, honestly, this read, looking at the buys, I think that's going to be a very important thing coming up because it's not just this round that we're looking at the next. And honestly, already with, I would say it seems like GCU every map have like a voucher to redeem to get themselves a thrifty. And Split, they had a couple of those, but one of them was off the back of what was an AFK round, a little bit of an awkward predicament. They did legitimately earn themselves one. So I think looking at this team, they averaged probably about 2. So I think we're going to be good for another one, but they're not going to get it in this half. So if they do end themselves in a situation where they don't have the guns, I do think they just kind of lose this thing out. Regardless, though, an 8-4 half, 7-5, even in the worst case scenario, 9-3, we've seen it all before. And both these teams are more than capable of bouncing back from something like that.
Yeah, I mean, you're up 2 maps. GCU, even if you lose this half advantage, you're going to be able to, have that confidence from the previous 2 map victories under your wing. And in addition to that, I mean, in my mind, I go back to, Ascent and what it is at its core. And the fact remains that sometimes it is a defense-sided map. And GCU is the one in the hot seat taking on that attacker half first. They've gotten some decent, executes, namely towards that B site, but the retakes have been on point for Terps Esports. I will say though, the first we've seen that I just realized that all the maps, everybody's starting on the same half. Attack for GCU, Terps on the defense, which shows that we could also be going towards a Terps Esports change when they need it here on map 3.
Yeah, I think honestly, I mean, it's kind of, it was a pattern that we've seen arise just out of these halves. I mean, knowing that already GCU, they've looked outstanding the attacking side. And as I said, it comes down to just understanding the patterns of the defaults. We've seen Terps Esports follow the same exact kind of pattern where they love pushing aggressively early on. GCU usually gets a read on it eventually. They win themselves a thrifty, turn it around, go on a string, answer it back in the second half is really where things just absolutely go up in flames. But this is a map where people know it so well, it's not really, I feel there's a little bit of complacency that exists in Ascent to some degree, where you've played it so many times where you feel like you've literally seen it all and you're ready for whatever comes your way. And there's always going to be that element of surprise that just does not strike you as something that you've seen before, or it's going to just come in the exact direction. While this map has been played so many times where you could probably have 2 maps that play down the exact same way, down to every single mere millisecond, in a situation, especially the caliber of a game like this between these 2 teams, there's going to be some curveballs that you just never really witnessed before. Sometimes it's a composition. Very rarely is it a composition. But more times than not, it is just, even if it's not the execs, because we see executes on sites so often where it's not really that crazy. It's the retakes that can really bring some new perspective here. And Terps being on the defensive side, leaning more into that, I think gives them a leg up here if they can really pull it off for the next couple.
That's the caveat. If they can pull it off in the next couple rounds, the intention again for this timeout. I feel like this is the longest timeout I feel like I've had in a while.
I was literally thinking about that. I was checking the chat. I'm like, is somebody DC or like?
We'll find
crazy,
out.
But somebody definitely did.
Regardless, even if it is a tech after the timeout, that's just an additional breather. Let the plans sink in. Let yourself get into that mental mindset of we need these next 4 rounds if we are at Grand Canyon University. And oh my goodness, we're already halfway through the round. There's 40 seconds left. Terps Esports has had the numbers advantage stripped away from them. So GCU stealing the momentum coming out of that timeout. Yex probably has already made the call that they want to save this operator. And I think that's a worthy call to make.
Spike planted.
Yeah, go ahead and get it out, get it to play, and get it into the game, but it's just not going to make enough of an impact. Even then, though, GCU was reading that as well. I mean, keep in mind what Sipes did, 2 rounds ago, playing up towards that high stat, looking to just immediately counter because you see nothing but the crown of his head. But everybody else on Terps, I mean, it's worth the call. Making it, getting yourself at least at 3rd, GCU have accumulated at least that. And that's all you need. That is the bare minimum. With 7-5 is going to be their best case scenario moving into the second half. And as I mentioned earlier, it's more than likely going to happen. But GCU, I think I've been way more impressed with their defense than I have Terps Esports. So for Terps Esports to at least get themselves a leg up, at least in terms of another round so far that we see, no matter what it may be, I want to see what GCU looks like when they are actually having their hand forced. We've seen them rebound over and over again. to at least manage to get themselves into a tie game and always squeak out a little bit more. Now, what if that mile is just a tiny bit longer, just by a couple inches? Or even then, what if the effort that they're required to put in to get to that tie game situation is just a little bit more? I want to see how far they can really go, knowing that this is going to be that match point for them.
Mick, I have some news to break to you that we did not just miss half a round, we missed a round and a half.
Yeah, because we were talking about 6-6, and I saw it was 7 coming
Yeah,
into
they
it.
took the timeout 6-2. We came back to the 7-3 victory. So they were actually denied the momentum out of that timeout and then somehow still leveraged it back. And sometimes that happens, right? You're waiting for that first buy round. You save for the eco. And this is interesting. Some exec mollies. A little bit maybe more cohesive of a site execute to come out from GCU this time around. Yek's going to try and challenge it with the operator, but that's just going to cause them to get detained at the end of the day. So site secured, post-plant ensues, and this is again going to be the test of how cohesive the Terps Esports retake is.
Well, at least from what we can see to some extent, it's going to be a retake, obviously, hailing mainly from the A-Heaven area of the map. And that's just the usual, per usual, nothing too crazy. But the one thing that isn't really kind of all that usual is going to be the push coming through. Off the back of that window, Dino able to go ahead and facilitate something here. The Hunter's Fury coming out earlier, but it's just going to be a little bit too early considering that you were praying that Sipe can close things out, clutch stuff up, and just go crazy on the last couple. And well, what do you know? That's exactly what he does.
Insane clutch there from Sipe when they needed it. And I mean, that's exactly what you need to send things to that 7-5 half to keep the prospects of that 3-0 flawless run in the grand finals alive. Because now, I mean, look at the economy for Terps Esports right during this last round. Yes, you can buy up the maximum that you can, but you can see the shortcomings. A stinger for Flaps. Maybe even some light utility across the board just to get those full shields. We'll have to see, but again, great challenges of this A main, this proactiveness that's been coming out from Terps Esports, and the only silver lining is that they hold the line with this Hunter's Fury, but now that's not a retake tool.
Yeah, I mean, even then, we're in the same exact situation like that last round where a singular individual was able to go ahead and hold down the entire site. So what happens when you have 5 players there? Once again, just ready to roll and rumble when asked of them. And, well, it looks at a different approach. We saw so many come from heaven, but even then, all the blood was actually spewed just sitting right on top of that spike. So when a couple more players would have come out from the angle, more so towards that tree area of the map, well, the result looks a little bit different, but, well, it's the harbinger of death once more. Sight. Second round in a row. Not a clutch this time, all things considered, but, well, it's just fitting that this shadowy figure just rained death over everyone in this map for a second time in a row.
I'm just, I'm just flabbergasted, because we went from, you know, an insane kill feed favoring, you know, Yex to then an ace from Sife, not even seconds later, to wrestle back that 5th round that they desperately needed. You know, sometimes you need a hero player, and Sife stepping up here on Ascent to end out that half as strong as possible. And so, again, in the hot seat, they won the pistol last half, but then got denied by a thrifty out of Terps Esports. Let's see if they can recreate that, but improve upon it by getting 2 rounds on this defense.
And I think they're obviously more than able and capable of getting just that. I mean, already starting things off, not in the hottest set of shoes. You would think they would win that first fight, or at least find a couple ticks of damage on the players, but ECU playing for full retake. I'm excited to see really how this one works out, because they are really taking their time there, but on Icebox, this is where we are. They didn't even have duelists for the retakes there, and they were just outstanding on it. Now, when things are a little bit different, and some equilibrium is finally reached, they once again kind of get things done to some degree, but it's Flaps versus Envies. Envies barely has any health, and, well, it's Flaps. But it doesn't matter. Envies having enough kills to say, I got momentum on my side, baby. I'm warmed up. It's a 4K for the Ghost.
That was just unfortunate, right? Flaps recognizing that their teammate was going to need help, that they needed to get to lane faster, and are still seconds late to the party. Placed in that 1v2, has the health advantage, one right click, one bullet lands, ends that match, but RNG not in your favor means a pistol in Grand Canyon's favor. The first time, actually, of this series where both pistols are going to be going to one squad. Grand Canyon University takes that cake, but again, we've seen these second rounds time and time get disrupted by Terps Esports Lotus. Let's see if we can add another tally to that chart.
Yeah, we've seen 1-to-1 on way too many rounds now. That, I mean, obviously, considering the caliber of these two teams and how they match up, it makes sense. But we'll see the Force come through every single player with a stinger. Terps really want it. And can you really blame them? They want to have this advantage. They are sick and tired of it being 1-to-1. And, well, they make quick work of at least one of the players. But Nader able to at least a little bit of a quick exchange with the Nano Swarm Grenade. Able to find a kill off the back of the actual gun in hand as well. But here it is. You're finding upgrades. More and more players dropping one after the other. But it's Astro and Yex here to show up, to play. And, well, in a 3v1 situation, it's nobody but Envies once again having to clutch it up.
You're kidding.
And with the Phantom in hand, I mean, I can't blame him if he really just wants to not take these fights.
I mean, at that point, it felt like Terps Esports, yes, they got the site control. Yes, they overwhelmed. But GCU was throwing themselves one after another into these fights that did not favor them. They were like, okay, wait, we should have the guns advantage, so I should be favored, but nobody made the comment that, yeah, it was a 5-person stinger force. Whoever died on site died so fast, there was not enough information for them to leverage. So history repeats itself. 1-1 for the first 2 rounds of the half, and Terps Esports clings on to the lead, resetting GCU into a save, and they should be able to widen things here to at least a confident 3. But after that, again, all it takes is one string of rounds to put GCU right back into it.
It most definitely does. I mean, we've seen them do it before. We saw them close out that last half 3 in a row, back to back to back. I mean, we'll stop them doing it again in a situation like this, where I think this team, when they get the full arsenal under their wing, they're looking good to really just line up whatever. They can really find themselves in any kind of fight and just create success rather than just manipulating it. But they're in a situation right now where that's just not going to be the case for them. They're looking for something. As I mentioned, the Thrifty. I think they're going to be good for a Thrifty in this half, but I don't know if it'll be this one unless Sight can just go absolutely ballistic. But they've already sniffed this guy out, so it's not going to be him.
Yeah, but GCU not going down without a fight. Nano here, behind, dies, dinks, but still not out of the fight. Returns the favor with a headshot, but Yex has that better weapon, has that trade. The concern here is the fact that they haven't followed through on this eggs. Like, the team knows because of that flank coming in from Flaps. For now, weapon collected. Yex paving the way here for this team into the site. Nader trying to challenge forward through tree, but door closed. Not much that they can find. Volt abandons the efforts of the flank, re-teams up so they have a 2-on-2, but this round, Terps Esports looking like they have a good chance of closing it out.
God.
But, I mean, suddenly, they have a weapon.
There's a chance. We haven't really seen Volt with any clutches here today, so, I mean, if there's a time to do it, good golly gracious, it is now. Able to isolate things into a 1v1 situation, knowing the peak's going to be coming out. Ash is going to be there, looking to at least get something off. But the stick is coming through. He honestly could have just let that alone. Could have held that 4-key, but still nails the shot. Still has it at half. And is able to find that moment, that highlight he's been waiting for. To, well, once again, get us right back to that 1-round delta that we're so used to by now.
Thrifty for thrifty, blow for blow. You name it, these teams have delivered it. That round, no exception. You placed Volt on a pedestal, Mick, and they were able to deliver. I mean, obviously the initiator's not used to or privy to those clutch situations. I think it was namely because they went for that flank play, so they had that information. They were able to keep the players on that A site to contest the entry head on. Yes, Jax had a glimmering moment of an entry fragger, but it was dashed away by that clutch. So now 8-7, a little bit of a pep to their step. They're trying to take that proactivity with some B main pressure, but it fizzles out thanks to some Killjoy utility. And now the re-adaptation, the refight in the mid, still going in Grand Canyon's favor.
It's going to be that point where they just get fed up. They're saying, tired of being a foot behind. I mean, knowing that the round, the eco is going in the direction of GCU, you're expecting them just to win these fights. And, well, these rounds, there's so many times where we've seen and we've expected fights to go in one direction with the guns in hand, but the Sheriffs have made an the Sheriffs have been the real MVP of this game, quite frankly. But I mean, honestly, GCU though, in a 4v2 situation, Eugene not having the greatest health pool on the planet, only one shot. I think if you got at least 2 bullets worth of damage inside of you, you're looking good to at least create something. But 18, yeah. You're just going to be made quick work of. It really comes down to Astro. And Astro's also had a night, but it's not going to be enough to clutch up in something like this. A 1v4 where you were the last remaining player. If you don't already have the smoke spree placed, it's going to be a nightmare to hold.
I mean, granted, if you're going to be on an eco round, you're going to be on a save. Getting that spike plant is huge. Yes, you're now tied 8-8, but the weapons are now going to be equated here following that round, or they should have been. Something's fishy with that economy. That looked like a full save last round, but light shields across the board. Something did not line up, and that's going to make chances of reconverting, reclaiming that lead here a little bit dicey, giving a window opportunity, slim be it, to Grand Canyon University to turn things back on its head. They had the tools to do it as well. Null Command online for the retake. I'm curious to see if we'll see anything out of Terps Esports on this exec in the form of ultimates, but we'd have to cycle through to see who's close enough to getting something online.
Well, there's time. There's still plenty of rounds left, all things considered. And even then, I mean, if you're going back and forth, which we expect it to be, we expect this to go 1 for 1, for 1 for 1, for 1. And if there's ever something, it's going to go right back to at least a 1 of Delta. And I think, honestly, with the Null Command coming out right now, it's good leeway for Terps Esports to get themselves finally in a little bit of a lead once more. Because would this really be a series between these two teams if Terps Esports didn't have a lead of at least by 1 round all the way until double digits? So we can see how this goes. This is where the chokehold was created on Icebox, 13-8. A team is guaranteed to at least bypass that threshold right here, right now. But it seems like it's going to be GCU because, man, not having the great start, having that first death, but everything afterwards was completely flawless.
Oh, that could be the start of it. I mean, that round, such a fluid retake. Looking like Terps Esports the first half. They do it without ultimates, so they start to stockpile those as well. I mean, you're even 2 off from the Hunter's Fury, so Terps Esports feeling like they're the ones in the hot seat this time. Time out, taking a chance to reconsider because, again, they're straining their economy round after round. There's been some faults, some lapse in how they are saving. Has that arc always looked like that with the little statue on it? I have never seen that. Wait a minute.
I believe so. I don't think they've adjusted too much, or if anything, like outside the map.
I'll have to go back and look at that in my customs.
But even then, I think it's a good time for a timeout, realistically. Knowing that, I mean, this is a situation, this is extremely reminiscent of what we saw on Icebox, but it's just kind of came at a different direction. And at one that obviously Terps Esports are not going to be fans of because it's them being put on the back end at a point where now you're looking at reaching that double-digit checkpoint chokehold situation I refer to so much. But even then, GCU always kind of reaching there first. We've seen them just past that with flying colors. Just kind of run over it like it's absolutely nothing. Round number 9 and the 9-3, whatever. Round number 10, they don't care. But looking at Terps Esports, obviously referring back to that one map, the small sample pool of the series that we do have, they didn't choke on it, but they definitely had things slow down. They definitely got put in a situation where they just could not live up to the tail, live up to the height that they needed to.
Well, keep the past in the past, reset the mental, move on. Terps Esports held on to that lead the first half that recently had fizzled out on map 1 and map 2. So that was already indications of growth, of improvement. This timeout meant to patch that, like you mentioned, dying framework, that out of steam mentality. The concern here, they've set up this A split, but they're going to be running into not just Killjoy utility, but 2 players. Nice little mode down here, wallbang and all. Dark cover's coming in a touch late for both sides, but it's going to appease the front until Envy's gets a nice spray down. It is just chaos left and right again. A full out duel for this site control, but The plant will follow. The question is, what are the retake ultimates going to look like for GCU? With the Hunter Fury popped early, that's a green light, or it would have been for the lockdown, but Eugene dashes all hopes to that and gets their own online in its stead, accelerating the timeline here for GCU, and they are going to deliver upon it regardless.
Beautiful resilience here from the side of GCU. I mean, when they have so much pressure put up to them, quite frankly, pressure makes diamonds, and these guys are so good at producing those things. I mean, they love pressure. Over and over again, they just see these situations. They find these gaps in mid-rounds with these circumstances where even then, the Hunter's Fury going down range, you don't care. The paranoia is thrown out on Jin. The tailwind across that line that is created by that ultimate and saying, I have setup. We still have time. We still got space. This is a pure line, and this is the big site we're working with. So let's make some magic happen, and GCU always able to pull that off, and even then still being pretty conservative with their own kits to get that exact result.
Yeah, I mean, GCU, they didn't even use their ultimates to get that round, so double digits handed over. Terps Esports momentum out of that timeout denied. You talked about them running out of steam, and that would definitely be a way to beat it out of them. Can kind of go for another split attempt, this time be at the end of it. Pop Flash secures the first frag. Now they're going to be running right into the Odin. The bait is perfect, but the follow-up not there. Paranoia spares them. Volt, the next contender, to try and play spoiler to this Terps Esports execute, but they're only good for one. The trade follows suit, and again, it's left to Sipe, who's been a hero before. 2v3 as the dust settles. Yex as low HP as they are makes this possible, and the lockdown just before the 0 point lands makes this even more feasible.
I wouldn't say Sipe's been much of a hero. Sipe has been the Grim Reaper, quite frankly. Finding so many kills successfully, putting his team in a constant situation of being just ahead in terms of numbers. And even then, when in a deficit, when all odds are against that one individual, always manages to come out on top and just kill anybody who wants to stop him from this goal of winning this game. And in this map especially, we saw 2 rounds back-to-back, a clutch and an ace, and now one more round to put on the resume of saying why you deserve to be a champion.
Oh my goodness. GCU putting up a show here. And you know what the saddest part about this, if they 3-0 Terps Esports, is that it's Spartacus's birthday. So this would be their, you know, a terrible way, I would say, to end out your birthday. So happy birthday, Spartacus, and I hope you had fun beforehand. Well wishes from NECC, but not from GCU. Whew, 11-8. What can they do on the precipice of map and series point? They're recognizing that there could have been maybe an eager play from GCU since they are on that brink of securing that 12, but for now they fizzled out that contact. Turret Paranoia traded, but the Odin spray delivers.
Does what it does best, and around that just quite frankly matters the most out of anything else. Hitting that 11 round, getting yourself onto a map point, especially when series point is at stake as well. It's at that stage now where GCU, they're just looking like a different squad, not really bothering themselves with the opponents at hand, just hitting shots and saying that this one should just be done.
Yeah, and I mentioned it last round, maybe that eagerness coming into play, but they just were so disciplined, holding down those sites. It's so funny, I mentioned it, all it takes is a streak of rounds, and this would be 7 in a row for GCU to close things out here, 3-0 fashion on a sense, and with the weaponry for both sides, it's going to be the Guardian Gang or bust for Terps Esports, and they're going to be taking the longest fights possible, tiles to, you know, Cubby, top mid to Arches, and with this gap in the smoke, Dino has an opportunity to snipe a first blood away.
He wants it. I can't blame him. I mean, lining up right there, not even holding through the suppression, holding through everything else, but already getting things underway. GCU not even expecting players to swing to find kills. Envy's getting the second, but that's off the back of a Hunter's Fury. Dino does end up dying with that operator in hand, but if there's a gun to pick up, it's not going to be that sniper. It needs to be Vandal, it needs to be a Phantom, but they already have him to work with. Looking for a little bit more emphasis, a little more space, a little more real estate to work with heading towards a site. You're just not going to find it. Envy's has been lighting up this kill feed this round, wants to get this game over with. And, well, with only 2 players sitting in your way, it's Astro, a player who we've seen be utterly disgusting and now getting a weapon upgrade. Can keep this game rolling, can keep the series running, but You got 3 players to go through. On just that A side alone, you got a lurking KJ over towards the B side, waiting to just completely lap you if given the time of day. And you're just pressing nothing but W heading towards this A side of the map, and it's just not going to work. GCU are your Nationals champions in the Champions Division, ironically enough, in a 3-0 fashion. Not even being the top seed coming into this, but good Lord. Did they just honestly say they deserved it this entire season with that performance alone?
I love me an underdog in 13-8, 13-11, 13-8 victories. So you can't say it was not surely fought for in each of these maps. I mean, they were the underdogs from the start, the get-go in all of these halves. I mean, yes, we ended 6-6 and 6-6, but that was one of them was a 5-1. One of these was a 7-5 half. It really was Terps Esports just struggling to close, struggling to maintain that momentum once they got on that attack half. And sometimes that does make the difference. So that means Terps Esports knows what they have to focus on moving forward, or I guess I should say next season in NECC. But for Grand Canyon University, that win has to be a huge mental boost for them. They're about to go into a LAN this weekend over in Texas, CECC, where they are an underdog up against some of the nation's best, some teams that are, staples of the Legends division for NECC. So they have something to prove, and just becoming the Nationals champs and champions, ironically, like you said, is going to be a huge title proceeding into that LAN event.
Yeah, and even, they had a very, very successful road to get here. They had so many good teams they had to face just to get to this point alone. It wasn't just this thing alone, this one matchup, singular. But, every other step to really get here to where they faced Concordia, that team that we were obviously we casted earlier on when it came around to Nationals and looked really good. Like they were finally getting themselves into shape for what was going to be the rest of the series. But even then, better yet, before that, Texas A&M, their white squad, which is Texas A&M, is always showing up. They always have themselves a presence. Knowing that every single one of these squads that has led up to this point, it felt like just that natural, perfect escalation to be prepared for Terps. And not even to a degree that I was expecting. Honestly, I think the preparation was there for a best of 5 to take us to all 5 maps. But the individual performance and the preparation of each player just showing up ready to roll is really what made the difference and said, look, we're not here for 5 games. We're here for 3.
Mm-hmm. And that makes it a nice, easy way to close out the evening instead of pushing us to midnight or 1 a.m. if we went the full distance to 5, because I'm sure each and every map would have been this pushing double digits for both teams. But again, the support players truly stepping up for GCU. Sype, Envies, stealing that MVP out of the way when they were that hero player round after round. So it just shows how every player was delivering on that squad. And like I said, UMD, nothing to scoff at. Their performance just barely falling short this evening. Again, some few pivotal rounds lost from overzealousness, over aggression, namely on Ascent, that 3rd round bonus conversion, or 2nd round, I should say, the force up, the Stinger Force. That was insane, and I cannot believe it. But regardless, like we said, our champions of the Champions Division have been crowned. Grand Canyon University making a name for themselves. But we do have other teams in other titles trying to claim similar titles, with tomorrow R6, League on Wednesday, Overwatch on Thursday, and Rocket League on Friday. And all of these are, preparations potentially, precursors, interludes, you name it, it's there. Just indications of what may be to come with the Nationals Legends Division LAN for all of these titles this weekend in person at that CECC May Madness LAN event in Arlington, Texas Arena. So yeah, a lot of esports this week, Mick, to start off the summer or end the finals period for schools.
Even then, it's the end of exactly the semester. We're at the point where, LANs are popping up everywhere. This is the point to where you've had, as a team, all these months and all these other different matches to prepare yourself for this month alone. This is not March Madness. In esports, we have May Madness. So we get to that point where things just are not by any means necessary. And easy taking. Every single match matters here, leading into the month and the entire month in itself. But with all being said, unfortunately, we do have to call it here, at least for Valorant. I don't know what the LAN lineup's going to look like in terms of talent, but at least for Zobi and I as a duo here, specifically in the NECC for this season, we will come to a conclusion. And if you want to go ahead and check out, as she said earlier, the rest are said the talent earlier. Everybody else, obviously, R6 tomorrow. Don't be done. NECC. Be right here for once more. Be good to each other. Best of night, and hopefully we'll see you here next season. Catch you then.